She enjoyed spending time outdoors with her friends and siblings and had a special love for animals. On April 5, 1996, when she was 9 years old, her family decided to visit her grandparents for Easter. That morning, her father left the house to do some shopping, while her mother stayed behind to clean up and prepare for the trip. After school, Jessica came home and asked her mother if she could go out to play in the apartment complex. The area was relatively safe because it was far from the main road and had many trees around. Her mother agreed but asked Jessica to play only in the yard. A few hours later, around 6 p.m., Jessica's father returned home and asked his wife where Jessica was. She was surprised because her daughter was supposed to be in the yard waiting for her father, but he insisted that she was not there. The parents went outside and searched the yard but did not find Jessica. Feeling worried, they decided to ask the neighbors in the hope that someone had seen their daughter. One neighbor said that he had seen Jessica in the front yard, sitting on the couch reading a book. But that did not help in finding Jessica. When darkness fell and their daughter was still missing, they decided to call the police. The police arrived a few minutes later and began searching and interviewing the neighbors. Despite their efforts, they could not find Jessica, so they expanded the search area to nearby streets. A few hours later, the police station received an unexpected call. The caller's voice was drowned out by loud noise, but the operator could still hear it. The caller revealed that the police would find the missing girl near a water pump station a few miles from her home. The police rushed to the pump station to check on the caller's instructions and witnessed a heartbreaking scene. Before them was the body of a girl lying near the station, hidden in a black trash bag. Just a few meters from the road, the pump station was under a bridge and could not be seen. The police quickly identified the victim as Jessica Knott and turned her body over to the medical examiner. Meanwhile, investigators focused on finding the person who made the 911 call and reported the news, as they believed the call came from the killer. But there was a challenge. The call was made from a public phone at a gas station less than a mile from the crime scene, and by the time the police arrived, the perpetrator was gone. Detectives tried to find fingerprints on the phone, but it was quite a challenge. A public phone could have many fingerprints. Furthermore, investigators realized that the criminal could have wiped the phone after making the call or used gloves. Experts concluded that Jessica was killed elsewhere and her body was moved to the water pump station. Marks on the ground in front of the pump station suggested that the killer could have dragged Jessica's body from a car and dragged it across the ground. Jessica's clothes were intact except for one shoe. Police could not find it in her pocket or in the surrounding area. The only clue found at the crime scene was tire marks on the ground. Police could not be sure that they belonged to the killer's car, but they took pictures of them. Medical experts performed an autopsy and determined that Jessica died from strangulation based on marks on her face and neck. It appeared that the killer did it with his bare hands. A hamburger was also found in her stomach, consumed less than an hour before her death. Her mother said she had not given Jessica anything of the sort that day, leading police to believe the food had been provided to her by the killer. Experts also found no signs of sexual assault, leaving the killer's motive unclear. Police initially suspected Jessica's parents because neither had a solid alibi for the time of her disappearance. Jessica's mother claimed that she was packing her belongings in the apartment, while her father went shopping. However, both had the opportunity to commit the crime, theoretically. Police were trying to figure out how the killer had taken Jessica out of the complex's courtyard without anyone noticing or without her calling for help. This led them to suspect that the killer may have known the victim and that she had left voluntarily. Another factor that supported this theory was the killer's tone during the 911 call. Although experts tried to erase the recording, they still noticed sadness and regret in the killer's voice, as if he truly regretted his actions. The killer's actions when calling 911 spoke volumes. It is possible that the killer did this for the thrill of toying with the police and manipulating the investigation, or that he truly regretted his actions and wanted to somehow alleviate that feeling. However, upon closer examination, investigators are inclined to the second option, that the killer truly regretted his actions. The police checked Jessica's father's car and found an important detail in the trunk. It was a roll of black garbage bags similar to the one in which the victim's body was found. However, after analysis, experts determined that this bag was not similar to the other bags in the father's car. Therefore, Jessica's father was eliminated as a suspect and investigators turned their attention to other people. Forensic experts studied the victim's clothes and body for clues. They found several important traces. There was a large amount of dog hair on the victim's body, which was very strange because Jessica's family did not own dogs. This suggested that the dog might belong to the killer. They also found human hair on the girl's body, which belonged to an unidentified white male. However, it took experts a few days to extract the man's DNA profile. Two types of strange fibers were also found on the victim's clothing. After analysis, experts concluded that one type of fiber could have come from the car seat cover and the other from the carpet. This further supported the theory that the victim had been killed elsewhere and taken to the water station by car. Experts attempted to identify the breed of the dog from the hairs on Jessica's clothing using an FBI database. This database contains microscopic photographs of hairs from many different dog breeds and has proven useful in criminal cases. The process of identifying the breed of the dog is done by comparing the hairs to samples from the database and eliminating each breed one by one. They eventually concluded that the hair on the victim's clothes came from a Shar-Pei. This suggested that the killer may have owned such a dog and that the hair had gotten on Jessica's clothes while she was in the killer's car or at their home. Investigators developed a preliminary theory that the killer may have lured Jessica into his car, taken her to McDonald's for a hamburger, then taken her home and killed her. Meanwhile, experts were also trying to improve the phone call recording. However, this was a challenging task. To solve this problem, detectives sought help from NASA. NASA has advanced tools for improving recordings, originally designed to improve recordings from space. They agreed to help and provided the police with a higher quality recording. Experts needed a voice sample from the suspect to compare with the call recording and determine a match. Because detectives suspected that the killer might know Jessica, they decided to play the recording of the call to her mother. Jessica's mother listened to the recording and said that the voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't remember who it belonged to. However, after listening to the recording a second time, Jessica's mother recognized the voice as that of a neighbor who lived in the same complex. She added information to detectives that the man often walked a Shar-Pei in the yard. Police quickly identified the man as James Crow, 35. During the initial investigation, investigators interviewed him along with other neighbors. He said that he saw Jessica in the yard while walking her dog. They talked for a while, and then he left. Detectives looked into his background and discovered that James had no criminal record. He lives with his wife, a nurse, and is currently unemployed, spending most of his time walking the streets with a Shar-Pei named Pumpkin. The detectives realized that James's voice and the fact that he owned a dog of the same breed were not enough to arrest him. So they obtained a search warrant for his car. During the search, they discovered two troubling clues. Under the front passenger seat, they found an empty Happy Meal bag, which was suspicious since Jessica had eaten a hamburger. Experts also noticed that his car had brand new tires, as if they had barely been used. The police discovered that James had replaced the tires on the day of Jessica's murder, even though his previous tires were not very old and could have lasted for several more years. James claimed to have left the old tires at a car repair shop, which was unusual since they were not old at all. The police went to the service center to investigate. When they arrived, only one of James's tires was left. They compared its tread pattern to those found near the body. However, the results showed that they did not match. Detectives were not 100% certain that the tire tracks on the ground were left by the killer's car, as it was possible that the tire tracks were from a maintenance vehicle that regularly visited the area. Police searched James's apartment and found a box containing rolls of trash bags that matched the bags found on the victim's body. Although not direct evidence, detectives decided to investigate whether there was any way to determine if the bags collected at the scene and at James's home came from the same manufacturer. However, identifying these bags was difficult because they had no distinct markings, and there were hundreds of similar manufacturers. To address this challenge, detectives contacted Roberts, who was in charge of quality control at a bag manufacturing company. Roberts was able to identify the factory that produced the bags found in James's apartment through the code on the cardboard box containing the rolls. This product was manufactured at a facility in Virginia. Experts discovered that small amounts of iron or titanium were present in the bag's composition depending on their color. Since the materials are constantly changing during the manufacturing process, the ratio of plastic to iron or titanium actually changes daily. Detectives decided to take bags from James's apartment and the crime scene to measure the ratio of elements in the plastic using high-intensity X-rays. This gave them a very accurate ratio. Careful analysis showed that the ratio of iron to titanium in both plastic bags was the same, which suggested that they were manufactured on the same day and even in the same batch. The process of manufacturing garbage bags often leaves a small amount of microscopic debris on the machine, which is normal. However, when the plastic sheets are cut into bags, this debris forms small streaks that can be seen with the naked eye. Each roll of bags will have a unique pattern made up of these streaks. The pattern on each bag was created by particles of debris moving down the conveyor belt, which were then replaced by new particles. As a result, the same pattern would be retained over several hundred feet of fabric. This suggests that the two bags were not only produced in the same batch, but also within a few hours of each other. When comparing the bags from the suspect's apartment in the crime scene, experts found that the lines on them matched remarkably well. Furthermore, after production, the bags were rolled into a bundle by a machine, but the machine often did this unevenly. Without close observation, these deviations were barely noticeable, making the rolls appear smooth. When examining the edges of the bags, there were small folds and wrinkles that formed a unique pattern similar to streaks. Experts compared and found that the pattern on the bags from James's apartment matched exactly the pattern on the bags at the crime scene. This meant that with a high probability, the bag from the crime scene had been taken from James' apartment. In addition, forensic analysts compared fibers found on Jessica's clothing with those from the carpet in James' apartment and the seat cover of his car. The results showed that both samples matched. Furthermore, an audio expert compared the recording of the 911 call with James' voice sample and concluded that they matched. Although the experts had collected a significant amount of evidence, the detectives still faced the major problem that all the evidence collected was circumstantial. However, the police were confident of James's involvement in Jessica's murder and decided to arrest him. Since James continued to deny his guilt, the case went to trial. The prosecution presented their report on how the crime occurred. James spent a lot of time outside with his dog, and all the local kids knew him well. They often played with Pumpkin, James' dog, and therefore, they trusted him. Jessica was no exception, and this trust may have led to her becoming a victim. The police provided an explanation of what happened on the day Jessica went missing. At that time, James was walking his dog and saw her sitting alone on a bench. He approached her, started chatting, and then invited her to McDonald's to buy her a hamburger. Jessica knew James quite well, so she agreed. According to the police, on that day, James noticed Jessica sitting alone on a bench while he was walking his dog and started chatting with her. He offered to take her to McDonald's, promising to buy her a hamburger, and Jessica agreed because she knew him well. After eating at the restaurant, he may have taken her back to the apartment complex and invited her to his home. He may have asked her to play with Pumpkin. The presence of carpet fibers from his living room on Jessica's clothes suggests she was there on the day of her death. According to the investigation, James may have intended to attack Jessica, but something went wrong. Based on the autopsy results, the perpetrator not only strangled her with his bare hands but also pressed his palms against her face. This may be evidence that she tried to scream, causing the perpetrator to panic and attack. After Jessica's death, James placed her body in a garbage bag and put it in his car to transport it to a disposal site without arousing suspicion. James drove a few miles to a nearby water station, where he left Jessica's body. He then returned to his house, perhaps after stopping at a gas station to make a phone call. During the preliminary hearing, James' attorneys attempted to dismiss all available evidence, arguing that there was no solid evidence to prove their client's guilt. However, in capital cases, the standard of proof is much higher. In James's case, he had a very good chance of avoiding the death penalty. Based on these facts, a plea deal was proposed to James. Under the deal, James would admit to second-degree murder and receive a 40-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole, thereby avoiding the death penalty. In the summer of 1998, 2 years after the murder, James agreed to the deal. Although he was not required to disclose details of the crime, James mentioned that part of his decision was to spare Jessica's family the long ordeal of a trial. The prosecution believed James had shown remorse, as demonstrated by his 911 call. However, the purpose of this call remains unclear. The only plausible explanation is that James genuinely wanted to reduce his guilt for such a serious crime. Jessica's parents were unhappy with the deal because they wanted their daughter's killer to receive the death penalty. They were also disappointed that James refused to confess to the crime. What was even more disappointing was that James did not serve his entire prison sentence due to poor health. He died in November 2011 at the age of 49, taking the secret of Jessica's murder with him. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Leanne Tiernan. Leanne Tiernan, born on September 27, 1984, is the daughter of Michael Tiernan and Sharon Hawkhead from Bramley. Her parents divorced early, but Leanne maintains a good relationship with her father. She and her sister, Michelle, live with their mother in Leeds, while their father remains a significant part of their lives. Leanne also enjoys spending time with her grandparents. She walks them to church every Sunday morning. Leanne also loves chocolate so much that an uncle has nicknamed her Chocolate Chip Niece. Leanne, a cheerful teenage student at West Leeds High School, is working hard toward her GCSEs. After studying diligently for her exams, Leanne decides to have a day out with her 15-year-old best friend, Sarah Whitehouse. Sunday, November 26, 2000, starts out bright and sunny. After church with her grandmother, she returned home and prepared to go shopping with Sarah. Leanne wore a black and white striped sweater, black trousers, and high black boots. She also wore a blue jacket. Her hair was tied in a French twist, which her mother loved, and she set off to meet Sarah. The two took the bus to Leeds City Centre. After shopping, they took the bus back home to Bramley. At around 4:50 p.m., they got off the bus and walked a short distance to Sarah's house before parting ways. Sarah saw Leanne walking towards Howley Gill. It was a deserted, unlit path in the woods, a shortcut that Leanne's mother had forbidden her to take at night. However, since it was still light, Leanne felt safe on this public path. It was only a 20-minute walk home. When Sarah called Leanne's house at 5:20 p.m. to talk, she was surprised to find that Leanne had not yet returned home. Sharon immediately called Leanne's cell phone to look for her, but there was no response. Sharon continued to call several times, but the phone only rang a few times before going dead. Finally, at 7 p.m. that evening, Sharon called the local police station to report her daughter missing. That same night, the family went to the local church to get flashlights to search the area. In the early morning, Leanne's was looked for, but there was no answer and no sign of her. West Yorkshire Police, led by Inspector Chris Gregg, launched an intensive search for her. It was a daunting task, with the area home to more than 700 houses, vacant lots, woodlands, canals, drains, and wells, many potential hiding places for the teenager. Despite the difficulties, the police were determined to find a way to bring Leanne home safely. Helicopters patrolled overhead while uniformed officers and sniffer dogs searched every nook and cranny of the streets. Litter collection was temporarily suspended to ensure that no evidence was lost. However, after a week, there was still no trace of Leanne. Investigators retraced Leanne's last steps. They were assisted by Leanne's 19-year-old sister, Michelle, and her best friend, Sarah. Michelle wore the clothes Leanne had been wearing and followed the route her sister had taken when she missing. "We tried our best, but we hoped that she had run away and that nothing bad had happened," Michelle later said. When the story was broadcast on TV, several witnesses contacted investigators to say they had seen a man walking a black and tan dog in the Howley-Gill area just an hour before Leanne got off the bus to go home. Investigators sketched out a general description of the man, about 5 feet 1 inch tall, with a stocky build and a round face that may have been scarred. He was seen wearing a 3/4 length waterproof jacket and dirty jeans, along with a black beanie. Police quickly alerted the public and received numerous calls. All of the dog owners became suspects. Ultimately, 70 dog owners were identified, but all were ruled out as suspects. The case has gone cold as there is little new information to go on. However, the public continues to support Leanne Tiernan's family and is doing everything it can to keep her story in the spotlight. Sean Clark, a father of 3 from Leeds, heard about the case and offered a £10,000 reward for information leading to Leanne being found safe. Iceland Foods, a supermarket chain, has printed Leanne's picture and details on milk cartons sold in stores across the country. Flyers and signs featuring Leanne in her uniform and the words, "Have you seen me?" have appeared in towns and cities. The police have received some information and have been able to confirm sightings of Leanne in areas as far afield as Doncaster and Blackpool, but all the information and reports of sightings have not brought them any closer to finding her. Leanne's parents have been in the media, making desperate appeals for the public to help find their daughter. It has been a very dark Christmas for Leanne's family and loved ones. Leanne's father left Christmas presents under the tree for his missing daughter, and AW's Life CD that Michelle had bought for Leanne has remained unopened. Months have passed since they began searching for her. They have sometimes felt depressed, fearing that she had been kidnapped and would never return. But Michelle said, "We couldn't believe it. Every day, when we didn't hear from her, we would ask ourselves, is she coming home today?" In the end, more than 2,000 homes, sheds, and outbuildings along the route they believe Leanne took on her way home from the shopping trip were searched. A detective explained, "We had to establish the route she might have taken. We called it the Red Route." Police took DNA samples from more than 140 men in the area and carried out searches at various locations across Leeds. However, they found no trace of the young woman. Her family and friends remained hopeful that she would return safely. On August 20th, 2001, 9 months after Leanne went missing, police found a body in Woodland in North Yorkshire. This ended any hope that Leanne alive. Police called the family to inform them of the discovery. On the day Leanne's classmates returned to school to collect their GCSE results, Mark Bisson was walking his two dogs in Lindley Woods, a densely wooded area just inside the North Yorkshire County border. He came across what looked like a pile of rubbish, but it turned out to be a floral quilt. He loosened the string holding the quilt together and found what looked like a body wrapped in bin bags. Police arrived at the scene and completely removed the blanket and 9 thick green garbage bags, revealing a clothed body. The victim's hands were tied behind her back with 3 yellow cable ties, and a leather dog collar was tightly secured around her neck. Investigators pulled the black garbage bag off her head to reveal the decomposing face of a young woman. At the time of her discovery, authorities were unable to determine the exact cause of death, but there was a suggestion that strangulation may have been the cause. This was not the first time a body had been found at the site. In 1992, the body of Yvonne Fitt was discovered in the same area, and the killer was never caught. Detectives hope this case will not end in the same way. Fingerprints identified the body as that of Leanne Tiernan. An autopsy revealed that she had been strangled with a plastic cable, resulting in her death. The disappearance has been classified as a murder. Authorities believe that the perpetrator is a local people. First, Leanne's body was found 16 miles from where she was last seen. Additionally, the yellow cable used to bind her hands came from the British postal system, specifically used by Royal Mail or Parcel Force. Finally, the green bin bags in which Leanne was wrapped came from Morrison's, a large grocery chain, with 2 stores in the area. DNA samples were collected from people involved, such as family members, friends, and known sex offenders in the area, in an attempt to match DNA. On September 28th, the day after Leanne's 17th birthday, she was buried at Sanford Methodist Church in Bramley, Leeds. The church where Leanne was baptized was filled with hundreds of people paying their respects. Many spilled out onto the streets to honor her memory and share stories of Leanne's life and optimism. All attendees were dressed in brightly colored clothing. Leanne's mother, sister, and close friends, along with others, carried a white coffin into the church. A wreath bearing the words, "Night Night Baby," and the Guns N' Roses song, "November Rain," were featured at the service. The congregation sang her favorite hymns, including "Give Me Oil in My Lamp" and "Ye Shall Go Out with Joy." Inspector Chris Craig was among those who attended Leanne's funeral. When he saw Leanne's coffin being brought to Hilltop Cemetery, where she was laid to rest, his determination to find her killers and bring them to justice grew stronger than ever. After conducting tests on a sample of the victim's heart tissue, the medical examiner concluded that the victim had been murdered on the day of her abduction and that the body had been refrigerated for months. Several weeks before the victim was found, the killer attempted to dispose of the body by dumping it in a public dumpster, covered with a blanket. The killer likely hoped the body would end up in a landfill, but that did not work. Worse still, the killer hid the body so well that it made it extremely difficult to collect forensic and DNA evidence. Law enforcement hoped to make a quick breakthrough in identifying the killer. However, that hope was dashed when the results showed that no DNA from the killer was found on Leanne. They decided to investigate the items found with her. Investigators discovered dog hair on Leanne's clothing, leading them to believe they could profile the pet's DNA and from there, identify the killer. The hairs were sent to a university in Texas, which had developed a technique for profiling pet DNA. However, the university was only able to identify a partial DNA profile of the dog. This was the first time a dog's DNA profile had been collected in a case in the UK, but there was no dog to compare it to, so the results were not used. The scarf found around Leanne's neck, which contained her hair, was a vital clue. Investigators tested the hairs for DNA and created a DNA profile. They then focused on the dog collar that had been used to wrap the bin liner around the victim's neck. The collar was manufactured by Armitage Leather Products in Nottingham. If the killer had purchased the collar from this company, investigators hoped to establish the name or address of the suspect. The company had reported that it had sold its products to 220 different wholesalers across the UK and had provided sales receipts to the police. Investigators began contacting each company to see if they had any records of sales to the Leeds area of West Yorkshire. They gained a lot of useful information from this investigation. Pet Pajamas, a mail order. Her company, based in Liverpool, had sold 3 leather collars and leashes from Armitage. Information about these 3 customers was passed on to investigators and began looking into their backgrounds. One of these customers quickly became a suspect. His name was John Taylor, and he lived in Bramley, just about 3/4 of a mile from where Leanne missing. This suspect had been mentioned earlier in the investigation. When Leanne's body was discovered, witnesses claimed that he had been in the woods with his dog. However, when questioned, he claimed that his dog had died before Leanne was murdered. Did John kill his pet to destroy evidence? Investigators wanted to know more about John. When asked how often he had been to the area where Leanne had missing, he claimed it was not a place he had ever visited and stated that he certainly did not go there with a dog. On the outside, John appeared to be a normal man. He was a 45-year-old parcel delivery driver working for Parcel Force, A division of the Royal Mail. His only previous conviction was for stealing a suit of clothes when he was 15. John was married and had 2 children, a son born in 1981 and a daughter born in 1983. The couple divorced in 1996. John lived alone in a terraced house on Cockshot Road in Bramley, Leeds. However, there were concerns that he enjoyed torturing the animals he hunted. His neighbors thought he was a normal person, but they had witnessed him catching and torturing rabbits, as well as stabbing a fox several times during his poaching trips. He also seemed to enjoy killing pheasants. After moving to his new home on Cockshot Road in 1982, John began keeping and breeding dogs and ferrets. His wife at the time, Janet, was usually proud of their home, but the stench from the animal feces gradually affected their marriage. She tolerated the situation until one day when he brought home 2 large owls to raise in the house. The owls lived on a diet of newly hatched chicks, which he had bought by the thousands and stored in a large freezer on the property. Janet eventually decided to file for divorce. After that, John traveled across the country, but not for work. Instead, he sought women and often engaged in sexual encounters. He also used Lonely Hearts ads. Through John's phone records, investigators began to track down women to interview. Most described him as harmless, but some admitted that they had called the police to report him as a suspect after Leanne's body was discovered and revealed details about her murder. 2 women painted a picture of a man with violent tendencies. One woman mentioned that he had asked to have sex with her daughter. An ex-girlfriend broke up with John due to his interest in bondage. He would tie her hands with rope and cover her face with a scarf. When the investigator asked her to describe how John bound her, she said he used a bundle of ropes that he kept in a drawer next to her bed. Specifically, he placed a plastic rope around each of her wrists and then used a 3rd rope to tie both of her hands behind her back. This method was similar to how Leanne was found, and this information has never been made public. Police arrested and questioned John. They took a DNA sample from him and searched his home and personal property. Police quickly cordoned off John's home on Cockshot Road, erected a 7-foot wall, and conducted a thorough search of the property. In the backyard, they found a hedge, a plum tree, and a poplar. Pollen patterns consistent with these plants were found on Leanne's hair, skin, and nasal passages, indicating that she had been there before she was murdered. When they dug up the garden, they discovered the remains of several animals, including 28 ferrets in a mass grave and the skeletons of 4 dogs. One of the dogs, which was brown and black, appeared to have suffered head trauma. It is possible that John killed the dog to cover up his involvement. When police learned that a man with a dog was being shook, hairs from the terrier were tested and matched those found on Leanne's body. Inside the house, the carpet had been removed. However, upon closer inspection, investigators found some pink carpet fibers caught in nails on the floor. These fibers matched exactly those found on Leanne's body. They also discovered Leanne's blood on the floor. The green bin bag that was tied around Leanne's body was manufactured in Devon. The manufacturer informed investigators that they had only produced a small quantity of this type of rope, which was used to make rabbit nets. The rope found at John's home matched the rope used on Leanne's body. In addition, a large quantity of distinctive yellow zip ties, manufactured by an Italian company for the Royal Mail, were found in his home. John, an employee of Parcel Force, a division of the Royal Mail, could have easily obtained these zip ties. Police also found a similar type of bin bag wrapped around a nail in John's kitchen. Furthermore, there were 3 RGE freezers on John's property. At first, John denied any involvement in knowing Leanne or having anything to do with her. However, when investigators presented all the evidence they had gathered, John eventually admitted that he had kidnapped Leanne but insisted that her death was an accident. According to John's testimony, after taking Leanne home, there was a struggle and Leanne fell, hitting her head and dying on the spot. However, no evidence supported the claim that Leanne fell. Additionally, John could not explain why Leanne was strangled or why her hands were tied with cables. Investigators have gained a better understanding of what happened to Leanne that night. Leanne was walking alone through the dark, unlit streets of Hollygill when John attacked her from behind. Although there were no direct witnesses, it was reported that someone heard a muffled scream. John covered her mouth and eyes with a scarf, wrapped her in a coat, and took her to his home, which took 22 minutes. There, he tied her hands behind her back and made her sit on a bench in the old kitchen. He strangled her with a cord and a scarf, then kept her body in the kitchen freezer for months. Before Leanne's body was discovered, his friends reported that a freezer in his kitchen was missing. Investigators believe that the freezer may have been damaged, prompting John to dispose of Leanne's body, a decision that ultimately led to his arrest. On February 15, 2002, John Taylor, 46, was convicted of Leanne's murder and kidnapping. He was sentenced to 2 life terms and must serve 20 years before he can be considered for parole. Investigators believe this was not John's first crime. The way he hid and disposed of the body was carefully planned, suggesting he had committed offenses before. After police identified John's DNA in a database, they linked him to 2 previous attacks. The first attack occurred on October 18, 1988, when John, wearing a mask and wielding a knife, attacked a 32-year-old Woma. And as she walked past Hollygill to pick up her children from school. The second incident occurred on March 1, 1989, when John, wearing a mask and wielding a knife, broke into the home of a 21-year-old mother. He dragged her into a bedroom and attacked her, stripping, blindfolding, and gagging her before assaulting her, while her 18-month-old daughter cried in the next room. John received 2 additional sentences for these crimes. In the years that followed, police conducted a nationwide review of unsolved cases similar to Leanne's. In 2018, John admitted to a series of sexual offenses against 5 women between 1977 and 1996, highlighting the seriousness of his misconduct. In another incident, He held a pregnant woman at knife point and forced her to perform a sexual act on him in 1977, just before Christmas. John Taylor was sentenced to life in prison for assaulting and attacking a barmaid. He is currently serving his sentence at Wakefield Prison, a maximum security facility also known as Monster Mansion, which houses many dangerous criminals who have committed extremely serious crimes. John has been implicated in nearly 10 unsolved murders. Among them is the murder of Yvonne Fitt, a 33-year-old woman whose body was found in a shallow grave about 100 yards from where Leanne's body was dumped in 1992. Lindsay Reimer, a 13-year-old girl, also missing after leaving home to run an errand, and her body was found 5 months later in a canal, less than 20 miles from John's home in Bramley. Deborah Woods was found at Elite train station. She was discovered in a bin bag, wrapped in bedding after being stored in a cold storage room. Rebecca Hall, a prostitute, died in Bradford, along with several others. Questions remain about how many murders and attacks John may have committed and how long he may have evaded capture. That he has managed to avoid arrest for so long is concerning. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Mindy Morgenstern. Mindy Morgenstern was born on April 29, 1984, in Bogota, Colombia. She and her sister were adopted by Eunice and Larry Morgenstern, farmers from New Salem, North Dakota, USA. The couple already had a biological daughter named Rebecca, but they wanted a larger family. They adopted a boy named Michael and later a girl from Colombia named April. When they found out April had a younger sister, Mindy, they decided to adopt her as well. This completed their family of 4 children, with 3 being adopted. Mindy was the youngest. Growing up on the farm suited Mindy perfectly. She enjoyed horseback riding and playing basketball. She assisted her parents with farm work and was even skilled enough to drive a tractor. After high school, Mindy relocated to Valley City and became in college life. Her outgoing and cheerful personality helped her make friends quickly. She balanced her studies with a part-time job as a waitress at a local restaurant. Her future had looked promising, but now her plans and dreams were shattered. Mindy's friends, Tony Bowman and Danielle Holmstrom, became concerned when she failed to answer her cell phone and didn't return their calls on September 13, 2006. They decided to visit her apartment to check on her. Upon arrival, they noticed Mindy's car parked in the lot, and Tony went up to the second floor to knock on her door. When no one answered, Tony entered the unlocked apartment and found it dark in the house. After taking a few steps, she stumbled upon something on the floor. Turning on the light revealed the lifeless body of Mindy, with visible injuries on her neck. Tony was shocked and immediately ran outside to call Danielle, who was waiting in the car. The two of them re-entered the apartment, confused and trying to make sense of what they saw. Mindy's body showed signs of knife wounds on her neck, and an empty bottle of cleaning agent lay nearby. The strong smell of the cleaning agent filled the entire apartment. Danielle quickly called 911 to report the discovery of her friend's body. Hearing the noise, a neighbor living on the same floor decided to come check out what was happening. He walked up to Mindy, he checked for a pulse and, after a few moments, confirmed to Tony and Danielle that their friend was deceased. Soon after, the police arrived at Mindy's apartment and were immediately hit with the strong smell of cleaning agent. Upon entering, they found Mindy's body lying across the living room floor with a belt wrapped around her neck and a broken knife lodged in it. The handle of the knife was lying next to her. It was clear that the perpetrator had attempted to destroy evidence using the cleaning agent, but fortunately, some evidence remained. Forensic experts discovered skin particles under Mindy's left-hand fingernails, indicating that she had resisted and scratched her attacker. As investigators worked to determine the motive behind the attack, they quickly ruled out a robbery gone. Mindy's purse, phone, wallet, and cash were still clutched in her right hand, and her jewelry and other valuables were untouched. The scene suggested that Mindy had been attacked the moment she entered her apartment with a basket of clean laundry, which was found next to her body. There were no signs of forced entry on the front door. This suggests that the person who attacked Mindy may have known her, or they may have entered the apartment immediately after her. The following day, detectives faced the difficult task of informing Mindy's family of her passing. Her parents, brother, and sisters were devastated by the news. The family couldn't think of anyone who would want to harm Mindy, as she was well liked by everyone. Furthermore, none of her friends had any problems with the law. Tony and Danielle, friends of Mindy, told investigators that they were not the only people in the apartment. A neighbor from the same floor had entered Mindy's apartment after hearing their screams, checked her pulse, and confirmed that she was deceased. When questioned, the man claimed he had checked Mindy's pulse with the back of his hand to avoid leaving fingerprints on her wrist. Which investigators found suspicious. This man's name is Robert Lind, and he had several scratches on his hands, making him a suspect. The police took Robert to the station for questioning. However, after reviewing his background and discovering his history of run-ins with the law, the number of questions increased. The police asked about the scratches on his hands, which he claimed were work-related injuries, explaining that his job working with steel often resulted in such scratches. When questioned about his activities on the day of the incident, Robert reported being at work from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Robert's boss verified this information and added that employees working in the same industry as Robert often have scratches on their hands due to the nature of their work. Despite his alibi, investigators did not clear Robert as a suspect and requested he a DNA sample, which he agreed to provide. The sample was sent to the lab for comparison with DNA found under Mindy's fingernails. The police interviewed Mindy's friends but found no leads. Everyone reported that Mindy had no conflicts with anyone. While waiting for DNA results, investigators spoke with other neighbors, including Mo Gibbs, a corrections officer from the Barnes County Jail. Mo lived in the same building as Mindy and was familiar with the investigators, so they hoped he might have noticed something unusual. As a corrections officer, Mo was likely more observant than the average person. He was married with a stepchild and lived in the apartment next door to Mindy. When he came to the police station for questioning, he brought his child, so one of the police kept the child, while Mo answered questions. Mo reported serving in the Navy from 1990 to 1999. He was discharged after being convicted of assault, for which he served a prison sentence. Following his release, he had no further run-ins with the law. Before becoming a corrections officer, Mo worked as a college security guard. On the day before Mindy's death, Mo claimed to have worked a night shift. The next morning, he returned home and began loading boxes into his car in preparation for moving to a new apartment with his wife and stepdaughter. Mo stated that he didn't notice anything unusual, but he did notice a strong smell of cleaning agent. However, he didn't investigate the source of the smell due to being preoccupied with the move. Mo had scratches on his hands, which he attributed to injuring himself while carrying boxes. When questioned by police about whether he had ever been to Mindy's apartment, Mo replied that he had visited once to help Mindy carry a laundry basket. Investigators requested a DNA sample from Mo for comparison, and he agreed without hesitation. After providing the sample, he was allowed to leave. Investigators sought to speak with anyone who had a close relationship with Mindy. To do this, they visited the restaurant where she was employed and conducted interviews with her co-workers. During these conversations, they discovered that a particular individual had been making Mindy feel uneasy. This person, a regular at the restaurant, resided in a nearby trailer and frequently visited the establishment. His behavior was described as peculiar, and Mindy had expressed discomfort when he was around. The man in question was identified as Ralph. When questioned by the police, he denied any involvement in Mindy's death, claiming he had no knowledge of who she was. According to Ralph, he had never had any disputes with anyone at the restaurant. Although Ralph did not have an alibi, he willingly provided a DNA sample. The police then sent this sample to a laboratory for comparative analysis. Next, investigators spoke with Jordan Ram, Mindy's boyfriend of over a year. He and Mindy shared a similar background, both coming from local farming families, and had met at church. Jordan had a clean record and a good reputation in town. He appeared dedicated to Mindy, often taking her to his family's home to spend time together. However, Mindy's parents reported that Jordan would sometimes arrive unannounced at their farm, asking to see Mindy. They sensed he might be jealous, but didn't think he was capable of harming their daughter. Jordan went to the police station immediately after being asked to do so. He was cooperative and honest in his responses to the investigators' questions. According to Jordan, he had spent time with Mindy the day before her death, going shopping and visiting a video rental store together. The next day, Mindy called him at 10:45 a.m., which turned out to be the day of her death. What struck Jordan as unusual was that this was the only call they exchanged that day. Normally, Mindy would call him about 10 times a day, but on that day, there was only that one call, and when he tried to reach her later, she didn't answer. Jordan assumed she was busy and would call him back, but unfortunately, that never happened. Jordan also provided details about his activities at the time of Mindy's death, stating that he was working on his family's farm. The investigators requested a DNA sample and asked him to undergo a polygraph test, to which he agreed. However, during the polygraph test, Jordan was very nervous, so the test results were unclear. Despite this, the police released him, sent his DNA sample for analysis, and began verifying his alibi. Kyle Kia, Mindy's ex-boyfriend, who was also a potential suspect. They had broken up over a year before her death, but something unusual occurred after the breakup. Kyle met Mindy when she was a freshman. They dated for 2.5 years, during which time Kyle regularly visited Mindy's family farm. Her family adored him and treated him like one of their own. Mindy loved Kyle deeply and thought they would eventually get married. However, their relationship ultimately ended without a wedding. When questioned by investigators, Kyle shared the story of his time with Mindy. He recounts the story of how they first met and the intense attraction they feel from the very first moment. Kyle described their 2.5-year relationship as having ups and downs. Kyle and Mindy began arguing frequently. After completing his university studies, Kyle needed to move forward with his life, so he relocated to a new area about an hour's drive from Valley City. This move concerned Mindy, who feared Kyle might find someone else, as maintaining a long-distance relationship can be tough. According to Kyle, he chose to end the relationship due to these challenges. Following the breakup, Mindy made efforts to reconcile with Kyle, but he said he'd have started seeing another girl and subsequently ceased communication with Mindy. However, about 7 months before Mindy passed away, she went to Kyle's house to talk to him. Kyle insisted he had nothing to discuss and asked her to leave. The conversation ended, and Mindy becoming upset and departing, marking the last time they spoke to each other. Kyle's demeanor changed a few days after Mindy's death, as he sat in the interrogation room. He expressed regret over his actions and revealed that Mindy had been in contact with his father, Rodney Kia, which he found unusual. According to Mindy's friends, Rodney would call her multiple times a day, sometimes scaling back to just a few calls a week. Kyle believed his father had become overly attached to Mindy. At one point, Kyle asked his father to cease communication with Mindy. He also mentioned that his mother discovered the frequent calls and was upset, telling Rodney it was wrong given. Despite this, the Kyle family had a genuine affection for Mindy, and her communication with Rodney may have been a way for her to maintain a connection with Kyle. The police investigated Mindy's voicemail and discovered a message from Rodney, left after her death, in which he was crying and apologizing for what had happened. This close relationship between Rodney and Mindy raised suspicions, and the police called him in for questioning. The police asked Rodney about his attachment to Mindy, his son's 22-year-old ex-girlfriend. Rodney acknowledged it was unusual but explained that he grew fond of Mindy when she was dating his son, Kyle. He liked Mindy because she reminded him of his wife when his wife was young. Initially, they discussed Kyle, but soon their conversations and texts expanded to other topics, and even after his wife discovered their conversation, this continued. Rodney stated that he and Mindy spoke frequently, sometimes up to 20 times a week, with Mindy usually initiating the calls. He described their relationship as paternal, considering her like a daughter, and was shocked by her death. He left a voicemail message for investigators, wanting to talk to Mindy one last time. However, these emotional messages only increased suspicions about Rodney's intentions. Although investigators doubted a romantic relationship between Mindy and Rodney, they considered the possibility that he had become dangerously obsessed with her. Rodney gave his DNA to the police and told them he was working on his farm with his 2 sons from 7:30 a.m. until evening on the day in question. His family backed up his story, so the investigators let him go. The police then sent Rodney's DNA to a lab to compare it with skin particles found under the victim, Mindy's, fingernails. As the police continued their search for Mindy's killer, people in Valley City grew increasingly worried about their safety. Many people were too afraid to leave their homes because the person who killed Mindy was still at large. 6 days after Mindy's passing, her funeral was held. Due to the large number of people wanting to pay their respects, the service took place in the school gym instead of the church. Undercover police officers attended, keeping a discreet watch on the crowd for any suspicious behavior, as it was suspected that Mindy's killer might be in attendance there. The police had also asked attendees to take photos and videos of the crowd, hoping to capture any unusual behavior. However, this effort did not produce any leads. With no new suspects, the police were left waiting for the results of DNA tests from existing suspects. However, investigators uncovered a significant lead. Upon analyzing the DNA found under Mindy's fingernails and entering it into the federal database, they discovered a match from a 2-year-old case in Fargo, North Dakota, approximately 75 miles from Valley City. In this prior case, the attacker forced her to have sex with him. The DNA match revealed that the same person was responsible for both Mindy's murder and in the attack in Fargo. These things indicated that the individual was likely to continue committing crimes. The police were now under pressure to apprehend the suspect before another victim was harmed. Although they still didn't know the perpetrator's name, the relevance to the Fargo case provided a crucial lead in the investigation of Mindy's death. The police investigating Mindy's case met with a 22-year-old woman from Fargo who had been attacked in a previous case. The woman had planned to become a teacher and had been out with friends at a bar, drinking and having fun, on the evening of the attack. She told her friends she needed to use the bathroom, but her memory stopped there. When she regained consciousness, she found herself pinned to a mattress in an unfamiliar apartment, with a man she didn't know on top of her. He covered her mouth to prevent her from screaming, and she tried to resist. Surprisingly, the man eventually let her go. She was barefoot and disheveled, with her purse missing. She reported the incident to the police and described her attacker as a muscular African-American man, over 6 feet tall and 200 pounds. Although the police couldn't find the attacker at the time, they had his DNA, which they entered into the federal database, but the case remained unsolved for 2 years. It was later discovered that the same man had committed another attack, this time resulting in death. In the investigation of Mindy's case, the police collected multiple DNA samples and sent them to the lab for analysis. After conducting more in-depth analysis, the lab experts found a match. The DNA belonged to one of the individuals who had voluntarily provided us sample DNA. Surprisingly, the match was not Mindy's ex-boyfriend Kyle or his father Rodney, who had initially raised suspicion. Instead, the DNA from the skin found under Mindy's fingernails belonged to 34-year-old Mo Gibbs. He worked as a corrections officer at the Barnes County Jail. O had undergone a big transformation in his past, having moved from being a member of the Crips gang in Central California to serving in the U.S. Navy. He had been married with children but got divorced and later relocated to Valley City. Before becoming a corrections officer, Mo worked as a college guard. Mo had been working at the Barnes County Jail and was known to the investigators handling Mindy's case. As he appeared to be a decent individual, it came as a shock when his DNA was found under Mindy's fingernails. The investigators devised a plan to bring Gibbs in for questioning without arousing his suspicion. They contacted him, stating they needed to ask a few more questions, all while keeping him under discreet surveillance in case he attempted to flee. Mo arrived at the police station on time, unaware of the true purpose of the interrogation. Before revealing the DNA evidence, the police offered Mo the opportunity to take a polygraph test. He agreed and responded to all the questions, but there are some indications that he is lying. Despite this, Mo maintained his innocence in Mindy's death. When informed about the DNA match, Mo remained surprisingly calm, continuing to deny any involvement in Mindy's murder. However, when told that his DNA also linked him to a case in Fargo, his demeanor changed, and he smiled, but said nothing. The collected was enough to arrest Mo Gibbs. He was handcuffed and charged with the murder of Mindy Morgenstern, followed by charges related to the Fargo case. After his arrest became public, 5 female prisoners came forward, alleging that Mo had coerced them into sexual relations while he was on duty. As a result, Mo faced 6 additional charges. It may seem unusual that someone with a prison record was hired as a college guard and later as a corrections officer at Barnes County Jail. However, Mo Gibbs' employers were unaware of his true identity. He had changed his name from Glendale Morgan Jr. to Mo Gibbs before applying to these positions. When he was in the Navy, Mo was involved in a drive-by shooting and subsequently spent over 5 years in prison. During his trial, Mo's lawyers proposed a theory to explain how his DNA came to be under the victim's fingernails, Mindy. They suggested that she may have touched the same door handle as Mo, thus transferring the DNA. The defense further implied that Mindy's boyfriend, Jordan, could have been the one responsible for harming her. Mo pleaded guilty to charges, except those directly related to Mindy's death. Notably, neither his fingerprints nor DNA were found on the knife that caused Mindy's injuries. Prosecutors attributed this lack of evidence to the use of a cleaning agent, which they believed he had eradicated all traces. The prosecution's theory was that Mo had entered Mindy's apartment immediately after she, with the intention of coercing her into intimacy. When she resisted, he lost his temper and murdered her. In an attempt to eliminate any evidence, he then doused the area with a cleaning agent. Mo maintained that if he had been the one responsible for Mindy's death, he would not have willingly provided a DNA sample. On July 12, 2007, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous decision, resulting in the trial being postponed by 4 months. During the retrial, prosecutors were better prepared and showed DNA experts to counter-challenge the defense's argument. The defense claimed that Mo's DNA was found under Mindy's fingernails due to accidental contact with a door handle. However, the experts testified that the amount of DNA found could only have resulted from intense physical contact. Additionally, Mo's cellmate testified that he had confessed to the crime and had even expressed a desire to commit the same crime again if given the opportunity. After deliberating for 27 hours, the jury delivered a guilty verdict on November 20, 2007, When given the opportunity to speak before sentencing, Mo Gibbs, 35, maintained his innocence and expressed sympathy for Mindy's family. He sent his condolences, as well as prayers, to Mindy's family. He added that it was horrible and it should never have happened, and he was sorry that it had happened. The judge found the evidence against Gibbs to be overwhelming, showing that he had strangled and stabbed Mindy, then poured the detergent over her face and body. The judge also denied Mo's request for a new trial. Mo Gibbs received a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder of Mindy Morgenstern. He was also given a 12-year sentence for assaulting a woman in Fargo and an additional 15 years for other charges. Mo Gibbs is currently serving his sentence at the North Dakota State Penitentiary in Bismarck. After the sentencing, Mindy's mother, Eunice, addressed Mo that she forgive his, but she won't forget what you did to Mindy. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Isabella Rodriguez. Isabella Rodriguez was born in Colombia in 1975 and moved to Florida with her family in the 1990s. They obtained U.S. residency and eventually citizenship in 2002, when Isabella was 27. She married William Hellman, but they divorced in 2015 after a decade together. Isabella then met Louis Bennett online, and they began a romantic relationship. In 2016, Isabella and Louis had a daughter named Amelia. 6 months later, they purchased an apartment in Delray Beach, a city on Florida's Atlantic coast. They married the following month, in February 2017. At the time, Isabella worked as a real estate agent, and Louis owned a small solar panel company. On April 30th, 2017, Isabella flew to the Caribbean island of St. Martin to meet Louis, leaving their 9-month-old daughter with relatives. They planned to spend a week on the water, returning home to Florida on Louis's sailing catamaran. After stopping in the British Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, they arrived in Cuba, where they stayed for a few days. On May 14th, the catamaran set sail from Varadero, Cuba, bound for Florida. Isabella called her sister 3 hours later to say she would be home the next day. At around 1 a.m., Louis sent out a distress signal to the U.S. Coast Guard, reporting that his ship had collided with an unknown object and was sinking. He also reported that his wife, Isabella, was missing. A Coast Guard helicopter crew located Louis in a life raft around 4 a.m. and took him to Key West Island, the southernmost part of Florida. The catamaran was found floating upside down at dawn, but had not yet sunk. During an interview with investigators, Louis explained that he and Isabella took turns keeping watch. At the time of the accident, it was Isabella's turn, and Louis was asleep in his stateroom. He woke up to the sound of the collision and rushed on deck, but couldn't find Isabella. He called out her name, but she didn't respond. Louis suspected that the loose mast might have knocked her overboard. Louis also stated that the last time he saw Isabella, she was wearing a life jacket. When he was rescued, a Coast Guard rescue swimmer noticed that Louis's backpack was unusually heavy. Upon inspection, officers found 225 collectible coins in the backpack, but their origin was unclear. Isabella Hellman went missing on May 15th, prompting a 4-day search and rescue operation by the Coast Guard. As no signs of her were found, the operation was officially ended on May 18th. The authorities were suspicious when Louis Bennett, Isabella's husband, requested a letter from the Coast Guard stating that his wife was presumed dead just 24 hours after the search had ended. The Coast Guard denied the request, as it was outside their jurisdiction to issue such a certificate. 6 days later, Louis announced on TV that he was traveling to Cuba to rent a boat and continue the search for his wife on his own. However, just 3 days after making this statement, Louis claimed to have already returned from Cuba and met with Isabella's sister, saying he had checked hospitals but found no signs of her. Lewis expressed his despair and resignation to the situation, stating he was struggling to accept that his wife might be gone. He described Isabella as his soul mate and someone he thought he would be with forever. The next day, Lewis and the police attempted to retrieve his daughter from his wife's family, but they refused to relinquish her. Lewis ultimately took custody of his daughter with the help of the police, despite the scandal surrounding him. During the dispute, Isabella's sister repeatedly accused Lewis of being responsible for Isabella's death. Lewis's calm behavior and actions after his wife's disappearance raised suspicions among both Isabella's family and the police. Investigations revealed that Isabella and Lewis had frequent arguments after the birth of their child. Family, friends, and neighbors all confirmed this. Isabella had confided in loved ones that Lewis wanted to move to Australia, but she was opposed to leaving the United States. On May 30th, Lewis gave an interview in which he denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. He claimed they had plans for a happy life together, but now he was alone and their daughter would grow up without a mother. While investigating Isabella's disappearance, the police also looked into the origin of valuable coins found among Lewis's belongings. It was discovered that Lewis had previously worked as a first mate on a yacht. The captain of that yacht had a collection of 617 rare coins worth around $100,000, which was discovered a year earlier. While the yacht was unoccupied and docked in the Caribbean, thieves broke in and stole the coins on board. Although the perpetrator was not caught at the time, the yacht's captain later identified the coins found on Lewis Bennett as part of the stolen loot, now that the FBI was investigating their origin. This new information led the FBI to obtain a search warrant for Lewis's apartment. Previously, 225 coins had been found among his belongings when he was rescued. On June 16, 2017, the search of his apartment uncovered an additional 162 gold coins hidden in a closet. Meanwhile, Lewis had relocated to England, where his parents lived, and had taken his daughter with him. However, due to financial difficulties, he returned to the United States and settled into an apartment valued at $125,000, while also receiving insurance payments for a lost catamaran. On August 28, 2017, Lewis Bennett was arrested in Florida and charged with stealing coins. He pleaded not guilty. A few days later, a federal judge set his bail at $250,000, which Lewis was unable to pay. As a result, he remained in custody while awaiting trial. Additionally, Lewis attempted to have his wife declared dead. Lewis benefited from his wife Isabella's disappearance by gaining control of their shared property and bank accounts. However, the judge refused to declare Isabella dead twice, as the investigation into her disappearance was ongoing. In a separate case, Lewis pleaded guilty to stealing coins and transporting them to the United States in November 2017. Lewis's parents asked the judge to be lenient when sentencing him, citing the fact that his daughter had already lost her mother. In February 2018, Lewis received a sentence of 7 months in prison followed by 3 years of probation. On the same day, Lewis was charged with second-degree murder in Isabella's death. Authorities believed he intentionally caused the catamaran they were on to crash, which was allegedly a staged event to cover up the crime. The prosecutor's case was based on the claim that Lewis wanted to inherit Isabella's wealth to pay off his debts and take their young daughter to live in Australia. Isabella had expressed fear of her husband in text messages a few months before her death, stating that she felt he no longer respected her. She expressed fear about returning home. In a message sent months before her disappearance, Isabella wrote, "If you no longer like or love me, let's resolve this immediately. It's sad how you treated me the entire time." An inspection of the catamaran before it sank revealed that the portholes below the water line were left open. The damage to the dual hulls seemed to originate from within the vessel, near the water line. The water line is the point where the surface of the water meets the hull of a floating vessel. An expert hired by the FBI analyzed photos and videos taken by the U.S. Coast Guard of the catamaran before it sank. The expert concluded that Lewis's account of the events was not credible. The analysis suggested that the vessel did not sink due to accidental damage, but rather appeared to have been intentionally scuttled. A professor of nautical architecture and ocean engineering at the U.S. Coast Guard Academy testified in court that the Coast Guard found no evidence of a collision that could have caused the catamaran to sink. Divers inspecting the vessel were cautious due to the risk of collapse, and eventually, the catamaran sank to a depth of over 4,000 feet, preventing a detailed inspection. 2 years after Isabella Hellman's disappearance, a judge officially declared her dead. Palm Beach County Circuit Judge Scott Suskauer issued a series of orders stating that Isabella was presumed to have died on May 14, 2017. Despite the passage of time, Isabella's body has not been found, and she has not contacted her family. Based on the available evidence, it is presumed that Isabella is deceased. The statement said, in January 2019, U.S. District Judge Federico Moreno suspended Lewis's February sentencing hearing in Miami and rescheduled it for May 28, saying he would not act until Isabella's family could personally visit her daughter Amelia, who turned 3 in July. In November 2019, Lewis pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and the second-degree murder charge against him was dropped. Before the plea deal, he faced a possible life sentence for second-degree murder, but the new charges limited his maximum sentence to 8 years in prison. According to a document filed with the court, Lewis claimed he didn't remember what he was doing when he discovered his wife was missing. He didn't search for her on the catamaran or in the water, nor did he use flares to signal for help. Instead, Lewis packed his belongings onto a life raft and then intentionally damaged the catamaran to make it flood, allowing him to escape on the raft. Prosecutors stated that Lewis waited 45 minutes after realizing his wife was missing to call for help. Notably, the U.S. Attorney's Office pointed out that Lewis was an experienced sailor with training in emergency procedures, having previously sailed from St. Martin to Australia. Don't understand why he failed to use his knowledge to respond to the emergency situation. Prosecutor states that Lewis admitted to being negligent in handing over control of the catamaran to his inexperienced wife, Isabella, resulting in her falling overboard and drowning. Despite being an experienced sailor with a Royal Yachting Association certification, Lewis failed to ensure Isabella wore proper safety gear. In contrast, Isabella had no formal sailing training or experience, and Lewis knew it. Lewis received training in emergency procedures, including man-overboard protocols and night sailing safety, but Isabella did not. The prosecutor notes that only Lewis knows the full story of what happened on the catamaran that night. Following Lewis' guilty plea, Isabella's family, through their lawyer, expressed their immense pain and asked Lewis to show remorse. They stated that while Lewis can never undo the harm caused by taking Isabella away, he continues to cause additional pain by depriving them of contact with his and Isabella's daughter, Amelia. Isabella Hellman's family is grieving and missing her dearly. Although they have had limited contact with her daughter Amelia through 3 FaceTime calls, they have not been able to see or hug her in a long time. They long to be reunited with Amelia and provide her with love and care. As a part of their family, they want to be with her. They urged Lewis Bennett to do the right thing. Lewis Bennett, Isabella's husband, was sentenced to 8 years in prison on May 28, 2019, after pleading guilty to manslaughter in connection with her death. During his sentencing hearing, Bennett apologized sincerely to Isabella's family for putting them through immense pain. He acknowledged that his actions led to a devastating tragedy, for which he is truly remorseful. Lewis admitted to making poor decisions that worsened the situation. He expressed regret in federal court in Miami, where he waived his right to appeal as part of his plea bargain. Before the judge delivered the sentence, Lewis requested the opportunity to be released from prison early so that he could continue to care for their daughter, Amelia. Lewis expressed a desire to care for his daughter, saying, "I want to raise her in a way that honors my late wife's wishes." However, the judge ruled against him, sentencing him to 8 years in prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. As a result, Amelia will remain with her paternal grandparents in England for the time being. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Diana Maria Cayer Lopez Pino. Diana Maria Cayer Lopez Pino was born on August 12, 1998, in Madrid, to parents Diana Cristina Lopez Pino and Juan Carlo Cayer. She has a younger sister named Valeria. Her family was wealthy and everyone in the family was very close-knit. But their lives hit a snag in 2013 when Diana's parents divorced. However, the father still visits his daughter regularly on holidays. In the summer of 2016, Diana, her mother, and her younger sister spent their vacation in the small coastal town of Apab du Carmel, a place they had visited many times before. The town, with a population of around 10,000, is a quiet and picturesque retreat away from the hustle and bustle of city life. On the evening of August 21st, Diana told her mother that she was going to meet her friends at Val Inclin Park to celebrate the Feast of the Virgin Carmen. The park was close to their vacation cottage, and Diana often walked there. Her mother gave her permission to go. Diana spent a fun evening with her friends, she unaware that it would be the last time they would see each other. At around 2:30 a.m., she said goodbye to her friends and began her home. On the way, she ran into a friend, Paso de Ariel, near her favorite pizzeria. He was the last person to see Diana that night. The next morning, August 22, 2016, became a nightmare for Diana's mother, Cristina. When she realized her daughter hadn't come home from the party, she grew concerned. Diana's phone was off, which only added to her worry. Without hesitation, Cristina contacted the police and reported her daughter missing. According to Cristina, Diana didn't have any serious emotional or mental health issues, despite her parents' divorce when she was younger. Police opened an investigation into Diana's disappearance, looking into the mysterious circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Diana's disappearance is a mystery that investigators must unravel. Their first clue came from the last message she sent to a friend in Madrid via WhatsApp. In these messages, Diana mentioned a stranger who was stalking her and shouting strange phrases, causing her to feel scared. Unfortunately, these were her last messages, after which she stopped replying to her friends' messages. During their search, they found a black hair band along the road that resembled the one Diana was wearing that night. Although this was the only evidence found at the scene of her disappearance, it gave investigators a clue to work with. Diana's friends had no information about her disappearance. Additionally, there were no CCTV cameras in the area where she was last seen. The street was dimly lit and deserted, with only a few garages and an old nightclub. Although some people reported seeing Diana get out of a car with 3 men and then get into another car, but these were not corroborated. The investigation into Diana's disappearance considered 2 primary theories. One possibility was that she was kidnapped by someone she knew. The other theory is that she was the victim of a random attack by a mentally unstable individual. Diana's mother proposed a third theory, speculating that her daughter might have been taken away by boat. New information emerged when Diana's friend and ex-boyfriend revealed that she had met a man from Morocco and purchased hashish with him. However, this detail only added to the complexity of the case. The media reported that the clothes Diana wore on the evening of her disappearance had been found, but her mother disputed it, saying it was not true. Several factors suggest that Diana did not leave voluntarily. Her credit cards and identification were still in the house. It suggests Diana's disappearance was forced, but the case remains unsolved and remains a mystery. After Diana vanished, the media reported on a fight between Diana and her mother that had occurred just days before. The press claimed that Diana had a nervous breakdown and needed medical attention. Her sister Valeria was also hospitalized with similar symptoms. To avoid conflict, the court awarded custody of Valeria to her father. The decision was made as a precaution due to the stress of Diana's disappearance. The father and Valeria left town, sparking rumors that the family was hiding something. Diana's friends revealed that running away from home was not unusual for her sisters, especially 16 years old Valeria. The family dynamics were complex, and arguments between the mother and daughters were common. This information raises a question. If Diana regularly left the house without any problems, why was her mother so worried this time? On August 31st, Diana's parents failed to appear for a press conference, where they were expected to provide an update on the investigation into their daughter's disappearance. According to the family's lawyer, her parents were too distraught to attend, as they were struggling to accept the possibility of never seeing Diana again. An article published in El Mundo on September 11th revealed new information about the family's situation. Contrary to the mother's claims that Diana did not have mental health issues, it was reported that Diana had previously gone missing for 3 days in April. During this time, she had turned off her phone and told her mother that she no longer wanted to live with her. The mother had not contacted the police, which raised concerns about her response to her daughter's behavior. Letters exchanged between Diana and her younger sister Valeria were also made public, shedding light on the emotional struggles both girls were facing. Valeria had been hospitalized multiple times in the past year, including one instance where she had to have her stomach pumped due to an overdose of prescription medication. Prosecutors have launched a new investigation into the alleged abuse of Valeria, the youngest daughter of the family, due to the lack of progress in the case of Diana's disappearance. The investigation into Diana's disappearance is currently in progress and is moving forward quickly. Forensic experts have analyzed several items belonging to Diana, including her toothbrush, comb, computer, diary, and prescription medication. Investigators have also questioned her acquaintances, including a young Moroccan man she had a brief relationship with. Unfortunately, these efforts yielded no results and police searches remained unsuccessful. The police have conducted extensive searches in the surrounding mountains, forests, rivers, and lakes. However, it appears that Diana disappeared at around 3 a.m., and the last signal from her phone was detected in the Tarragon area, 13 miles from her family's location. 72 days after her disappearance, Diana's case remains unresolved. However, police have found a hairband and a cell phone matching the description of Diana's phone. Her father has confirmed that the phone belongs to his daughter. 2 months after Diana went missing, her Facebook profile suddenly became active again. Her friends and family quickly informed the police and provided screenshots. It appeared that the Remind Password feature had been used, allowing someone to access her account without knowing her login details. This led to 2 possible explanations. Either Diana had forgotten her password and was trying to regain access, or someone else was attempting to break into her account. Diana's phone was a key element in the case, but it did not provide any useful information that could help explain her disappearance. The investigation finally made progress on November 10, 2006, when the driver of the car in which Diana was last seen was identified. The driver had a history of being involved in human trafficking, but this information was kept confidential to avoid jeopardizing the investigation. Initially, he had an alibi for the night of Diana's disappearance, as his wife claimed he was with her, which temporarily cleared him as a suspect. On December 25, 2017, a new piece of information came to light that greatly helped the investigation. A girl was attacked by a man who demanded her phone and threatened her with a weapon. She screamed, and a passing couple intervened, saving her from the assailant who attempted to drag her into his car. The traumatized girl quickly contacted the police, providing a description of the attacker and his vehicle's license plate number. The next day, the police arrested 41 years old Jose Enrique Abuengay, who had a previous criminal record. Significantly, Jose Enrique was the same individual who had been detained in 2016 on suspicion of kidnapping Diana, but was released due to an alibi provided by his wife. Police re-questioned Jose Enrique and his wife. Following the interrogation, the wife admitted that her initial alibi had been false, and in reality, Jose Enrique was away from their home on the night Diana disappeared and did not return until 4 a.m. Jose Enrique initially claimed that he had accidentally hit Diana with his car and, fearing discovery and imprisonment, he had dumped her body. However, he later changed his story, confessing to kidnapping and murdering her. According to Jose Enrique's new testimony, he went to the beach to look for gasoline from abandoned cars, and that's where he met Diana. The confession of Jose Enrique reveals shocking and disturbing information. He kidnapped Diana, attempted to force her into a sexual act, and ultimately strangled her. This shocking confession sheds light on the case, confirming that Diana's disappearance was a heinous crime. The disappearance of Diana Maria Cayer Lopez Pinal has been a traumatic and lengthy case for her family and those following her case. The investigation lasted 494 days, and was heavily covered by the media, with many unfounded and damaging rumors about her parents, causing them great distress and making the investigation more difficult. Despite these challenges, investigators persisted and eventually gathered enough evidence to identify the perpetrator. Diana's loved ones remember her as a beautiful, energetic young woman, whose short life was unfortunately ended after an encounter with a violent man. Although Jose Enrique initially withheld information about Diana's whereabouts, he eventually revealed the location of her body, allowing her family and friends to hold a proper burial in January 2018. Her body was discovered in the well of an abandoned warehouse. The perpetrator, Jose Enrique, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after serving 35 years. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery, the case of Mitzi Sanchez. Mitzi Sanchez was born on August 10, 1992, in Vallejo, California. She grew up in a large, with 2 brothers and a sister. As a child, Mitzi was cheerful and bright, enjoying time outdoors with friends and playing with her siblings. From a young age, she demonstrated independence, often walking to elementary school with her brother without adult supervision, as the school was nearby. On August 10, 2000, Mitzi's 8th birthday, she was excited about the celebration party her family had planned. However, when she asked her mom if she could skip school, the request was denied. Upset, Mitzi left her home with her brother at around 7:30 a.m. The plan was for her to wait for her brother after classes, and they would walk home together. But when her brother went outside the school, he couldn't find Mitzi. Assuming she had already left without him, he headed home alone. However, when he arrived home, Mitzi had disappeared without a trace. Mitzi's older sister grew concerned when she realized Mitzi was missing, especially since her birthday party was supposed to take place that day. As her absence seemed unusual, the sister called their mother around 4 p.m. to report the situation. The mother immediately contacted Mitzi's school and confirmed that Mitzi had attended all her classes that day. However, when the mother reached out to family members and Mitzi's friends, no one had seen her after school. Mitzi's family became worried and started looking for her. Family, friends, and neighbors mounted a massive search operation. Some walked the streets, while others went door to door along the route from her home to school, asking locals if they had seen her. They also distributed flyers with information about Mitzi. Despite their extensive efforts, they were unable to find her, leading Mitzi's parents to call 911 for assistance. The police quickly joined the search and local media started covering the case. The news of Mitzi's disappearance spread quickly, not just in local news outlets but also across the state. Mitzi's family has given several interviews to raise awareness of her disappearance. Her mother desperately pleaded with them to return her daughter safely. The police received a lot of information, but none of it was useful. 24 hours after Mitzi went missing, the investigation had new clues. A man contacted the police to report finding bloody rags at a landfill. After further examination, experts discovered that the rags were actually bed sheets from a hotel in Vallejo. The evidence was sent to the lab for analysis, but it would take several days to obtain the results. Investigators also went to the hotel, but they were unable to confirm whether Mitzi was there. As the investigators waited for the lab results, they thoroughly searched the landfill for any additional clues, but they found nothing. However, the next day, August 12th, the police received a call that changed the course of the investigation. At around 11 a.m., a man called the police to report a disturbing incident. While driving through an industrial area in Santa Clara, he saw a little girl running towards his van, screaming that someone was chasing her. The girl quickly got into the van, and the driver saw a man running in their direction. A young girl escaped from her kidnapper and sought help from a van driver. As soon as she got into the truck, the kidnapper quickly fled the scene. The girl, who identified herself as Mitzi Sanchez, told the driver what had happened, and he immediately contacted the police. The officers quickly took Mitzi to a hospital for a medical examination. They also arranged for her to speak with her mother over the phone, and soon her relatives arrived at the hospital, where they were reunited with Mitzi. The van driver proved to be a valuable witness in the investigation. He was able to provide the police with the license plate number of the kidnapper's vehicle, which he had seen as it sped away. The truck driver happened to be on the road that day, which was lucky. If he hadn't been there, the kidnapper might have caught up with Mitzi. The police checked the license plate and discovered that the car belonged to 39-year-old Curtis Dean Anderson, a man with a history of crime. He had previous convictions for theft and kidnapping and was also suspected of other offenses. Police took a statement from Mitzi about what happened to her. Mitzi recounted that on August 10th, she was excited to finish school and head home to celebrate her birthday with her family. When her last class ended, she decided not to wait for her brother and walked home alone. As she walked, she noticed a car parked by the side of the road about a few hundred yards away. Inside, a man was watching her through the rearview mirror. The girl felt uncomfortable, but she was not worried because it was daytime and she was walking on a familiar street. In addition, because she was young, she was not aware of the potential risks posed by strangers. Mitzi was approached by a man who got out of his car and asked for her help. He claimed to have a leg injury from an accident and needed assistance in retrieving a roll of tape from under the car seat. Despite feeling uneasy, Mitzi agreed to help, as her parents had taught her to assist others in need. However, as soon as Mitzi reached for the tape, the man's intentions became clear. He pushed her into the car, covered her mouth, and slammed the door shut. Mitzi tried to scream, but it was too late. The man drove away, Mitzi to watch in horror as they passed by her home, where her family was preparing to celebrate her birthday. The man eventually stopped in a deserted parking lot, where he gave Mitzi new clothes and forced her to change. He then threw away her old clothes in a nearby trash bin. He warned Mitzi not to try to escape, claiming he had a gun and that no one had ever managed to escape from him. For the next few hours, Mitzi was driven to an unknown location. Mitzi demanded to know why she had been kidnapped. But the man's response was that he had gone through a similar experience as a child. When night fell, he stopped the car again and began covering the windows with rags to conceal their location. He then shackled Mitzi's leg with a chain and padlock. The man pulled out a bottle of alcohol and insisted that Mitzi drink some. Despite her initial reluctance, she eventually gave in. He took pictures of her using a camera. The perpetrator then lay down in the car to sleep. Fearing that she would be at his mercy if she fell asleep, Mitzi stayed awake and began thinking of an escape plan. Her chance came when she saw a police car driving past the parking lot. However, it was too far away, and she realized that even if she screamed, the officers would not be able to hear her. The next day, the perpetrator continued to drive Mitzi around the city, forcing her to sit on the floor of the car and covering her with sheets to conceal her from view. At one point, he briefly stepped out of the vehicle, giving Mitzi an opportunity to try and escape. She attempted to free her leg from the chain but quickly realized it was impossible. She also found a nail file and tried to use it to unlock the padlock, but unfortunately, it didn't work. When the perpetrator returned to the car and drove away, he made a disturbing claim. He had stopped by Mitzi's parents' house. Under the guise of a good citizen, he asked for flyers to distribute around town, further manipulating the situation. Mitzi was left feeling shocked and overwhelmed, knowing she had been so close to home yet still remained in captivity. Over the next few hours, the perpetrator repeatedly stopped the car, getting in and out. Eventually, he drove to a remote area outside of town and parked. There, he committed a sexual assault against Mitzi, leaving her in a state of shock. Afterward, the perpetrator fell asleep. The next morning, he resumed driving, making several stops to buy cigarettes and alcohol. When he returned to the car and leaned into the cabin, an object fell out of his pocket. He warned Mitzi not to look, but she disobeyed. She glanced down and saw a large set of keys. Mitzi quickly realized that one of the keys could open the lock on her chain. Although afraid of the perpetrator's possible reaction, Mighty was brave enough to act. She grabbed the keys, selected one that seemed to fit the lock best, and tried to unlock it. To her relief, the key worked. Mitzi managed to free herself from the chain and moved towards the car door, which was the last barrier between her and freedom. To escape, she opened the window and tried to climb out. However, her body was exhausted, and her legs had almost no strength left. Using the last of my strength, she pushed herself upwards and finally jumped out of the car. As she moved around it, she spotted her kidnapper, who instantly saw her as well. He yelled for her to come back, but Mitzi had no intention of surrendering. She took off in the opposite direction, and her kidnapper started chasing after her. As she fled, she attempted to get help from passing cars by waving her hands and screaming, but all the cars ignored her pleas and kept driving by. Not losing hope, Mitzi kept running forward. In her desperate situation, every moment seemed like an eternity. Mitzi is driven by the fear that if she stops even for a moment, she will be captured by the perpetrator, a fate she is determined to avoid. Finally, she spotted a van and she ran towards it, jumping in front of it to stop the driver. The driver quickly halted, and Mitzi climbed into the cabin, exhausted, dehydrated, and starving, but safe. At the hospital, she received the medical attention she needed, and her family soon arrived to be reunited with her. Mitzi's story quickly became top news in town. When she returned home, thousands of people gathered on her street, cheering and shouting birthday wishes she had missed while in captivity. Meanwhile, the police were searching for her kidnapper, whose location remained unknown. During the investigation, the police showed Mitzi's mother a photo of the suspect, and she recognized him. She had seen him twice before, once before Mitzi's abduction, when he was standing on their street, staring at their house, and again the day after Mitzi's disappearance, when he came to their home asking for flyers. Police eventually arrested the suspect, Curtis. He confessed to Mitzi that she was not his first victim and that no one had ever managed to escape him before. Curtis's careful planning and execution suggested he had experience with similar crimes. It is notable that Curtis had a prior conviction for kidnapping a woman in 1991, for which he served time until his release in November 1999. The trial began in April of the same year. Mitzi bravely testified in a crowded courtroom, recounting every detail of Curtis's crimes against her. Even though Curtis was there, Mitzi remained calm and completed his mission. As a result, Curtis received a 251-year prison sentence. However, this marked the beginning of a new chapter in the investigation. Detectives regularly visited Curtis in jail, questioning him about potential involvement in other crimes. One of these visits, they discovered that Curtis had confessed to a fellow inmate about kidnapping and murdering 8 additional girls. The inmate agreed to cooperate with the police, sharing Curtis's confession in detail. However, Curtis himself was reluctant to reveal all his secrets. Instead of denying the allegations, he attempted to negotiate privileges in exchange for information, speaking with detectives in riddles. As for Mitzi, she was constantly bullied and ridiculed by her classmates, labeling her the kidnapped girl. They even told her she should have died instead of being rescued. The constant bullying made her school years extremely difficult, which hindered her recovery from the traumatic experience. Mitzi could no longer handle the immense pressure. As a result, she turned to alcohol as a means of coping with stress, relying more and more on it. Eventually, she lost hope of returning to a normal life. However, a car accident after a party with friends changes her life forever. Mitzi suffered serious injuries, including a broken neck and arm, and spent 2 weeks in a coma. Upon waking up, she received news from her doctors. She was pregnant with a daughter. This gave Mitzi the power to change her life for the better. She decided to devote herself entirely to her daughter and also to helping other children who were victims of various crimes. Mitzi went on to found a non-profit organization that continues to help those in need to this day. As for Curtis, he passed away in 2007 due to illness, just 6 years after being sentenced. The detectives' only regret was that they were unable to obtain full confessions from him regarding other cases he was suspected of being involved in. Notably, his son followed a similar path and was also convicted of murder. Unfortunately, the son's life was cut short in prison in 2019. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Cassie Farrington. Cassie was born on December 22, 1990, in Virginia. She was the second of 4 children to Chuck and Darlene Brooks. Cassie excelled academically and was an active student, she becoming a member of the National Honor Society and participating in sports. Her initial goal was to pursue a career in medicine. However, when Cassie turned 16, her life drastically changed. She became pregnant, which led her to change her future goals and plans. Several major changes in Cassie's life occurred in the next month. Cassie graduated from high school, gave birth to a baby, married Bradley Farrington, and moved out of her parents' house, all within a brief period, just 1 month. Several years later, she had another child. But over time, her family relationship began to deteriorate. Ultimately, the marriage ended in divorce. Despite this, she persevered, raising her 2 young children in Silver City, a small town with a population of about 10,000. At 22 years old, she worked as a nurse at the local hospital and rented a place from a coworker. As she turned 23, Cassie entered into a new relationship with a man named David Berry. He bonded quickly with her children, and she felt grateful for the way things were going good. Rather than rushing into things, they focused on building a life as a family unit. Cassie confided in her loved ones and co-workers that David had brought happiness to both her and her children, and she was hopeful that this new relationship would bring her the peace and happiness she had been missing after her previous failed marriage. On March 24, 2014, Cassie phoned her parents after finishing her night shift at the Silver City Hospital. They chatted for a few minutes, during which she shared her plan to drive home, pick up her children, and take them to school. Afterward, she intended to return home and rest for a couple of hours before picking her children up from school later that day. School staff called Cassie's parents when they couldn't reach her. Her children had finished their classes, but Cassie hadn't shown up to pick them up. Cassie's mother tried calling her, but there was no answer. Thinking Cassie might have overslept after a night shift, her mother asked Cheryl, her landlord, to check if Cassie was home and if she was okay. Cheryl went to the house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. She then walked around the house and peered through the back door window, noticing water pouring from the bathroom into the kitchen. She knocked harder on the door and shouted Cassie's name, but still got no response. With her own key, Cheryl unlocked the door and entered the house. The sound of running water was louder and more distinct. As she walked across the wet floor towards the bathroom, Cheryl called out Cassie's name, her voice shaking slightly. Then she saw Cassie. Cheryl, a co-worker and friend of Cassie's, discovered her lifeless body in the overflowing bathtub. She was lying face down, wearing a house robe, as water continued to pour out. Despite Cheryl's first aid skills, she realized that Cassie had been dead for a few hours, as rigor mortis had already set in. This made CPR impossible. Cheryl immediately called 911 to report the incident. She then broke the devastating news to Cassie's parents over the phone, informing them of their daughter's passing. As Cheryl waited for the paramedics and police to arrive, she took a moment to inspect the house. She noticed that the second bathroom, located elsewhere in the house, also had an open faucet with running water. However, the hub there had an overflow protection, so the excess water wasn't running onto the floor but going down the drain. Cheryl also observed that the towel rack in the bathroom had been pulled off the wall and was lying on the floor. Upon receiving the news, Chuck and Darlene, Cassie's parents, were devastated. They stopped everything they were doing and traveled from Arizona to Silver City. Within a few hours, they arrived at the house, where their daughter's body had been found. The police were already on the scene, investigating the circumstances surrounding Cassie's death. The officers observed that there was no sign of forced entry into the house, as all the locks were still in place, the windows were closed, and the glass was intact. Additionally, valuables in the house were still intact, so the possibility of robbery was unlikely. The local sheriff questioned Chuck and Darlene, asking if Cassie had any intention of committing suicide and if she had any reason for doing so. However, Chuck and Darlene firmly dismissed this idea and declared that there was no way Cassie would do such a thing. The police chief repeatedly told Cassie's parents that she had likely taken her own life, as if he was trying to convince them of that fact. However, Cassie's parents found the police investigation to be rushed and confusing. Normally, the scene of the case is thoroughly examined and investigated, a process that can take several days. In Cassie's case, the police left the scene just a few hours after her body was found, and they informed Cheryl that she was allowed to enter and use the house. This worries Cassie's parents and they decide to investigate the house themselves. After finding water still in the bathtub, they emptied it and discovered black streaks on the sides of the tub that resembled the marks left by rubber-soled shoes. They also found Cassie's glasses, hairband, and a coat hanger in various places on the floor. Cassie's parents were even more suspicious when the police didn't take the time to search the house for fingerprints. They suspected that the authorities might be trying to close the case quickly without thoroughly investigating it. It wasn't until they contacted the district attorney's office that the police appeared to put in more effort. However, they were still unable to close the case due to the findings of the medical examiner. The autopsy report showed that Cassie had several bruises on her body, particularly around her neck. The examiner concluded that her death was a homicide. However, the investigation had difficulty by the property owner having cleaned up and made some repairs after the incident. This meant that the original crime scene had been disturbed, which could impact the investigation's progress. Cassie's parents were met with silence from the police as the months went by. The police did investigate David Berry, a man Cassie had been seeing before her death, but he was quickly ruled out as a suspect due to a solid alibi. However, as time passed, Cassie's parents grew increasingly frustrated with the local police, feeling they were not doing enough to solve the case. Their concerns led Chuck and Darlene to request a meeting with the chief district attorney to voice their dissatisfaction with the handling of the investigation, specifically with Detective Jose Sanchez. After reviewing the case file, the district attorney agreed with the parents, finding that Jose had made numerous errors. As a result, Jose was removed from the case and a more experienced detective took over. From the start, Cassie's family and friends suspected her ex-husband, Bradley Farrington, was responsible for her death. At the time of Cassie's passing, Cassie and Bradley was entangled in a heated custody battle over their children. And Bradley stood to gain the most from Cassie's death, because he will win custody of the child. Bradley Farrington is a former Silver City police officer who had just retired a few months before Cassie's death, and his good relationship with investigators kept him from being considered a suspect. However, Bradley had a clear motive for the crime and possessed the necessary knowledge to destroy evidence. He was well aware of police procedures and how to cover his tracks. For example, the bath water will wash away any remaining DNA evidence on the body, as well as erase shoe prints on the floor. Given Cassie's familiarity with Bradley, it's likely that she would have opened the door for him. Unfortunately, due to the poor handling of the investigation by the local police, so any evidence linking Bradley and to the crime scene was lost and could not be restored. The only remaining way to hold Bradley accountable is through eyewitness testimony. Cassie had told her parents about their family being abused by Bradley, and that he often acted arrogant because he was a police officer. Cassie lived in constant fear, and Bradley's friends were police officers and she couldn't turn to them for help. She had confided in co-workers about Bradley's threats, including the ominous threat that he would make her disappear without a trace. Tragically, her life was cut short, and she was found dead on March 24, 2014. 19 months later, on October 23, 2015, 28-year-old Bradley Farrington was arrested in connection with Cassie's death. Although Bradley was a suspect, the local police mishandled evidence, leaving none that directly linked him to the crime. As a result, the judge made a decision permitting previously recorded statements from Cassie to be used as testimony during the trial. During the trial, multiple witnesses testified, including Cassie's parents, friends, and co-workers, to whom she had confided about the abuse she endured at the hands of Bradley. Notable among the witnesses was Dr. Michael Hunter, a renowned forensic expert from San Francisco. With over 20 years of experience, Michael presented the jury with autopsy photographs and concluded that Cassie likely died from strangulation. Cassie had injuries to her neck, which supported that conclusion. After a warrant was issued for Bradley's arrest, Jose Sanchez, who initially handled the case, appeared in court. Jose claimed he had never considered Bradley Farrington a suspect because there was no reason to, and also testified that no fingerprints of Bradley were found at Cassie's home. The crime scene was unusually clean, Jose said. He believed the scene was cleaned after the crime was committed, which explains why no fingerprints were found. After 4.5 hours of deliberation, the jury found Bradley Farrington guilty on September 7, 2018. Bradley was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. He later filed an appeal with the New Mexico Supreme Court in 2020. Bradley appealed his conviction, claiming the trial court erred in allowing Cassie's co-workers, friends, and family members to testify in court. However, the state's highest court declared it had enough evidence to convict Bradley and rejected his appeal. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Repkina. Anna Alexieva Repkina, a charming and outgoing woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, hailed from a good family. With a strong work ethic, passion for travel, rock music, and cats, she owned several. Anna was a vibrant individual. She loved capturing life's precious moments through photography and valued romantic relationships deeply. Her ultimate goal was to find true love, settle down, have children, and build a happy family. Anna's remarkable sense of humor made her a delight to be around, something her friends and acquaintances often highlighted. However, her life took a dramatic turn in 2016, when her high school sweetheart of 7 years ended their relationship, leaving her devastated. Despite this heartbreak, Anna refused to give up on her dreams. She took the initiative to try online dating, determined to find her ideal partner. On a Russian dating site, she came across a promising match who seemed to possess all the qualities she was looking for. Anna met a charming young man named William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. What drew her to him was his fascination with Russian culture, but more importantly, his adoration for her. William consistently showed kindness to Anna, often complimenting her and making an effort to be present for her whenever she needed him, despite the physical distance between them. Those who knew him described William as a charismatic and passionate person with a great sense of humor who inspired those around him to chase their dreams. As they developed their online relationship over several months, their bond grew stronger. They seemed perfectly suited for each other, sharing similar tastes in music and a love for live performances, as well as a similar sense of humor. Friends who knew them noted that Anna and William complemented each other beautifully. William's caring nature was evident in his thoughtful gestures, such as sending Anna flowers despite being separated by oceans. Anna and William's online chemistry was undeniable, but they wanted to confirm their connection in person. So in December 2016, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to spend the Christmas holidays with William. However, she initially made a mistake and booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. Before realizing the error, she had already flown to Maine, but she was determined to make it work. After fixing her flight issues, Anna finally arrived in Oregon. William picked her up from the airport, and they spent the next 10 days together. He took her on sightseeing trips, and they enjoyed activities like visiting the seaside, playing in the snow, and cuddling by the fire. William also introduced her to his friends, and they celebrated New Year's Eve together, sharing a romantic kiss at midnight. It was the perfect Christmas experience for Anna. After a whirlwind 10-day visit, William popped the question to Anna using his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was leading a double life. During their time together, he had also been secretly seeing his 33-year-old landlady, Michelle Chavez, behind her back. William rented a room in Michelle's house, and it seemed he also held a special place in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 children, but this didn't deter her romantic involvement with William. Their affair had been ongoing for over a year when Anna, William's girlfriend, visited Michelle's home. Unbeknownst to Anna, she was meeting her rival, as Michelle was her boyfriend's landlady. Michelle showed understanding when William brought Anna to her home, perhaps thinking William would never leave her or believing Anna was insignificant, much like her own husband. Whatever the reason, Michelle didn't expose their secret. It wasn't until Michelle discovered the engagement ring that her husband's stance on the situation became clear to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Russia, unaware of the drama she had left behind. After posting a photo of her engagement ring on Facebook, the social media algorithm brought the post to Michelle's attention. Michelle's anger wasn't solely due to William's engagement to another woman. Michelle planned to leave her husband to be with William, and, as a symbol of her commitment, took off her wedding ring and gave it to him. However, she soon discovered that the ring was identical to the engagement ring William had given to Anna. It turned out that William had given Anna Michelle's own wedding ring, which had been recycled. Michelle confronted William about this, and he tried to calm her down, insisting that Anna meant nothing to him and promising to break off their engagement on March 1st, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna had packed her bags, including her wedding dress, and had quit her job, ready to start a new life with William in another part of the world. Michelle was unhappy about this development. Anna's mother, Yelena, also had reservations about her daughter's hasty decision. She was unsure about William, whom Anna barely knew, and thought she was rushing into things. Anna, however, was convinced that she was in love and saw no reason to wait. Yelena finally released Michelle from her grasp. Michelle, realizing Anna's visit was not a social call, grew angry. She demanded that William find another place to live, refusing to let the engaged couple stay under her roof. William complied, renting an apartment for himself and Anna. However, he continued to secretly see Michelle, sneaking out to visit her and reassuring her of his commitment to her, downplaying Anna's importance. Michelle became increasingly worried about William's growing relationship with Anna, so she took action. She contacted Anna on Facebook, revealing everything about her and William's ongoing affair. Anna reported the conversation to William, but he dismissed it as Michelle's jealousy. Anna believed him, and the couple decided to ignore Michelle's warnings and focus on their future together. They set a wedding date for March 23rd and planned a beachside ceremony. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home. They planned to try to get married again in April. On that same day, surveillance footage captured the couple buying food at a McDonald's drive-thru. Anna sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress. William had told her that the officiant was sick, but that was a lie. Despite claiming he didn't love Anna, William had kept her convinced that he wasn't invested in their relationship. However, Michelle had grown tired of William's manipulation. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum: choose between her and Anna. Michelle made it clear that if Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action, build a snowman, a sinister phrase meaning to kill someone, and hide their body in a snowy area where it would never be found. After issuing her threat, Michelle lost contact with William and assumed he had chosen Anna over her. She left him voicemails to express her feelings. On Sunday, April 16th, William phoned Michelle to share the news that he was single again, having just ended his tumultuous relationship with Anna, who was now headed back to Russia. Coincidentally, William had hit a deer with his car and was waiting at the Ali Martile store for repairs. He asked Michelle to meet him there. As it was Easter Sunday, Michelle was attending a family gathering, but she excused herself to join William. When she arrived, they reconnected by having an intimate moment in William's car, reaffirming their strong connection. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in the forest. Initially, investigators didn't know her identity, as there was no identification found with her body, and she had only been in the state for about a month. The crime scene lacked a murder weapon, but was littered with trash. However, amidst the debris, a clear plastic bag caught their attention. Inside, they found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The KFC receipt turned out to be the crucial clue in solving the case. It contained a date, time, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he was best friends with William and had been getting to know Anna. He also shared a tradition with William where they would eat lunch at KFC every Friday. The receipt, it turned out, was from a purchase made about a week before Kevin's questioning. The investigation into Anna's death led to the discovery of William's deceitful behavior. In his interview, Kevin revealed that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to clear his head. However, William never returned the weapon. The police began to suspect William and Michelle after hearing Kevin's statement. Following Anna's death, William's behavior became increasingly unusual and suspicious. He withdrew money from Anna's bank account to pay off his debts, and was caught on camera buying cigars and Star Wars Legos at various stores. William also confided in Kevin that he was spending money recklessly to cope with his emotions. Furthermore, he began researching time travel and even reached out to strangers on WhatsApp, offering to exchange his soul for the opportunity to go back in time. William wanted to travel back in time to April 16th to prevent a situation caused by his best friend's mistake. However, on that day, William was seen crying in a store employee's arms, claiming his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He had moved back in with Michelle, but was picked up by the police and questioned. The police asked William about his whereabouts on April 16th, and he said he was on a drive with Michelle. When asked about Anna, he denied having a romantic relationship with her, saying they had only gone on 2 dates, and he had ended things. According to William, their last interaction was in mid-March, when Anna, mistakenly, posted their engagement on Facebook, causing trouble with Michelle. When questioned about the trash found near his late fiancée, or the woman he dated, William admitted to littering, but claimed it was just KFC trash and a can from the general store, not related to Anna's death. About 40 miles separated the Alp General Store from the logging road. However, the investigators did not believe William's alibi. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators, quickly increased the pressure by revealing that William's trash had been discovered near a murder victim at a different location. Initially, William reacted with surprise and heartbreak, feigning disbelief that he was being questioned about a murder. 2 days after Anna Rapina's body was found, her fiancé William Hargrove was arrested for her murder on April 19th. During the investigation, Michelle was also questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, the day Anna was killed. At first, Michelle stuck to a rehearsed alibi, claiming she and William had spent the day together, with William picking her up from her mother's house and going on a drive. However, Michelle later changed her story, admitting she had lied initially. She then claimed that she and William had planned to meet up, but he never called or showed up. When the police revealed that William was in custody for murder, Michelle's response was surprisingly calm, saying only, "Okay." The investigator pressed Michelle on her lack of emotion, which eventually broke down, and she tearfully attributed her initial calm to being in shock. William Hargrove was indicted on charges of murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018. His trial began in October 2019, with the prosecution seeking the maximum penalties for each charge, while the defense argued for a more lenient sentence. William's defenders claimed he was innocent and that Melissa, the spurned lover, was the true culprit. However, the prosecution presented a strong case against William, backed by evidence and motive. The evidence showed that William was torn between 2 lovers, with Anna pressuring him to make a choice. There were records of William and Anna driving together in an Alon car. On the day of Anna's murder, William's cell phone was tracked to the logging road at 4:30 p.m. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with his fingerprints being the only ones on the weapon. Despite denying any involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to go shopping and pay off his car insurance. He was even filmed withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. The prosecution argued that William had driven Anna to the forest, gotten her out of the car, and then executed her with his shotgun. The prosecution claimed that William was faced with a choice between Anna and Michelle, leading to his actions. In contrast, the defense argued that their client was innocent. According to the prosecution, the evidence pointed to Melissa as the perpetrator. A threat from Melissa to build a snowman with Anna, her cell phone found near the logging road, and Anna's cell phone discovered in Melissa's house suggested that Melissa had planned the crime. Melissa, who was not charged with any crimes, testified as a witness for the prosecution. She revealed that she worked as a late-night cab driver and was married to an Oregon State University instructor, but their marriage was loveless and open. She met William at a bar where he worked and, with her husband's permission, began a romantic relationship with him. As they grew closer, William rented a room in her house. When Anna entered the picture, Melissa was not threatened, having a similar open relationship with William. Melissa explained that by her second visit, she couldn't tolerate the situation anymore, especially when she saw her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although she had given William an ultimatum, she had no role in William's actions that hurt Anna. Melissa clarified that she never intended for Anna to get hurt or killed. She denied the defense's allegations, stating that the threat about building a snowman was just a joke, a light-hearted family comment, even if it was a bit extreme. She acknowledged that her cell phone was found in the forest, but William was the one who drove her there. She didn't know why or what he planned. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned. As his partner, she naturally held onto it for him. Melissa's testimony lasted 14 hours, and she was not the only one. Around 70 other people testified, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some of Melissa's family members, and others. Throughout the case, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, particularly in her hometown in Oregon, where she was criticized and ostracized by the locals. Michelle had reached a low point and attempted suicide, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. The prosecutor praised Michelle's efforts to take responsibility, calling her actions tough and super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours and returned with a decision. Despite the defense's efforts, they couldn't find Michelle guilty of Anna's death. There was no physical evidence linking Michelle to the crime scene or the weapon used. In fact, she had a solid alibi. She was celebrating Easter at her mother's house, and multiple witnesses could vouch for her presence. On the other hand, William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence against him led to his conviction on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. Anna's attorney announced plans to appeal the verdict. Notably, the jurors developed a strong connection with each other during the trial. After the trial, they visited the logging trail, where Anna's life was tragically cut short, to pay their respects to her memory. Anna will be remembered as a courageous young woman who left her home in Russia to build a new life in the United States. Anna was a loving person who openly shared her love with others. She was cherished by many during her lifetime, and her memory will continue to be loved and honored. The prosecutor, Amy Matsko, stated, "Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Schmidt family. Tyler Schmidt was born in Iowa, USA, on November 13th, 1979. He grew up in Cedar Falls, a city that is home to the University of Northern Iowa. As a young boy, Tyler joined the Boy Scouts, where he earned the prestigious rank of Eagle Scout. This experience sparked a lifelong love for nature and camping in him. The camps organized by the Lutheran Church, which promoted family bonding, were particularly enjoyable to him. In his free time, he learned to play the trumpet. Tyler's true passion, however, lay in adventure and sports. He was a member of the cross-country running team and the swim team at Northern Iowa High School in Cedar Falls. He also enjoyed outdoor activities like canoeing, hiking, and snowshoeing. Later, his interest in computing led him to Truman State University in Missouri, where he studied computer science and earned his degree. It was there that he met Sarah, who would later become his wife. Sarah was born on March 27, 1980, in Kansas City. During her childhood, she spent time near St. Louis with her siblings, Karen, Jane, and Adam. Sharing Tyler's passion for the outdoors, Sarah enjoyed bird watching and studying insects. Like Tyler, she was a dedicated Girl Scout and earned the highest honor, the Gold Award. Her adventurous spirit was inherited from her mother, with whom she went on a backpacking trip to Central America. It's no wonder that Tyler knew Sarah was his soulmate when he met her as a student. Sarah excelled academically and demonstrated exceptional leadership skills, particularly in student projects focused on enhancing school life. Her positive leadership and inclination earned her the prestigious Truman Scholarship while still at Washington High School in Washington, Missouri. This scholarship led her to Truman State University, where she met Tyler. As they fell deeply in love, she readily accepted his marriage proposal. Both Tyler's and Sarah's families supported their decision to marry, recognizing that they were perfect for each other and destined to build a beautiful family together. On June 22, 2002, guests gathered at St. John Lutheran Church for Tyler and Sarah's wedding. Family members took their seats, while Sarah waited outside with her father. At 22, the couple exchanged vows, promising to stay together until death parted them. They chose Boundary Waters for their 10-day honeymoon, sharing a love for nature. In the initial 10 years of their marriage, Tyler and Sarah prioritized establishing financial security and advancing their professional careers. After completing their undergraduate degrees in Missouri, the couple relocated to Lawrence, where they pursued their master's degrees at the University of Kansas. Sarah eventually worked as a computer science expert, while Tyler held jobs at a supermarket, a delivery company, and UPS. He also had a long-term career at a company specializing in business billing and payments, which lasted for 18 years. During this period, the Schmidts' marriage was filled with exciting experiences beyond their professional commitments. The couple made it a point to spend quality time together, exploring new outdoor destinations and engaging in various activities. They regularly socialized with family and friends, bonding over their shared love of board games. Occasionally, they participated in events organized by the Lutheran Church. As enthusiastic fans of the Kansas Jayhawks, they attended basketball tournaments held at the Allen Fieldhouse. The year 2013 was a mix of sadness and happiness for the couple. They suffered a significant loss when Sarah's father passed away from a heart attack, leaving his loved ones in grief. However, 2 years later, in 2015, they experienced the joys of parenthood with the birth of their son, Arlo. In 2018, they welcomed their beautiful daughter, Lula Schmidt, into the world. When Arlo turned 6 and Lula was 3, the family made the decision to move to Cedar Falls to be closer to Tyler's family. The community of Cedar Falls warmly welcomed them, and soon they became active members of it. Tyler continued his work as a software engineer, while Sarah took on a role as an assistant at the city's public library. The children enrolled in the preschool program at Lincoln Elementary School. Tyler and Sarah were renowned for their kind nature and willingness to lend a helping hand, making everyone around them feel valued and important. This dedication earned them the admiration and affection of their neighbors and the entire community. Similarly, at the library, Sarah's warm and friendly personality quickly made her a well-known and appreciated figure, both among her colleagues and the wider community. The couple instilled their passion for outdoor activities and nature in their children, Arlo and Lula. In 2021, they began taking their kids camping, and despite their busy schedules, the children loved these trips so much that the parents made time for them whenever possible. By mid-2022, Sarah's workload had increased significantly. She took a day off in June to celebrate their 20th wedding anniversary and planned another day off in July for a family vacation. She had to finish a project for the library by July 26th, but was determined not to let it interfere with the family's plans. During the week of July 11th, Sarah told her brother's wife that she would be taking the kids camping at Makata Cave State Park in Jackson County, Iowa, a popular destination known for its 13 impressive caves and stunning natural landscapes. On Thursday, July 21st, the family packed up their car and drove 140 miles to reach Makata Caves. The Schmidt family, Tyler and Sarah, both 42, and their children, Arlo, 9, and Lula, 7, arrived at the campsite before 5 p.m. As the camping area was crowded, they set up near the park's entrance. A few hours later, around 7 p.m., another family parked their vehicle about 200 feet from the initial family's tent. This family consisted of Joe and Cecilia Sherwin and their 23-year-old son Anthony, who hailed from Nebraska. The Sherwins proceeded to set up 2 separate tents, one for Joe and Cecilia, and another for their son Anthony. At the time, they were on their way back home following a week-and-a-half-long camping trip that had taken them to Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The journey had been an enjoyable experience, and it had brought Joe, Cecilia, and Anthony closer together. Anthony was a devoted son, praised by his mom for his kind and sensitive nature. He was an excellent student and entrepreneur, working on a lucrative business venture that would financially support his parents. Though his mom, Cecilia, didn't know the details, Anthony kept her updated, mentioning only that his project involved secure emails. At Makata Caves, the campers retired to their tents as night fell. However, their peaceful slumber was disrupted before dawn on July 22nd by the sudden sound of gunshots. Just prior to the commotion, a man clad in black had entered the Schmidt's tent, attacking Tyler and then Sarah. Arlo, who had been asleep, was awakened by his sister Lula's screams. As he turned, he was met with a horrifying sight. Blood inside the tent. Frantic with fear, he managed to escape and ran to seek help. As he fled, he heard one final shot. Meanwhile, Cecilia and Joe, who were camped nearby, rushed out of their tent amidst the chaos. Joe searched frantically for his son among the campers, asking if anyone had seen him. Arlo, still in a state of panic, continued to run until he encountered the sheriffs. He was screaming for help, explaining that his parents had been shot. Cecilia grasped his hand and ran with him to the park entrance. Once there, terrified and unsure of what had transpired, she pulled out her phone and dialed 911. She was beside herself with worry, fearing that her son might be among the victims, since he had been sleeping near the tent where the shots had come from. Cecilia called the Jackson County 911 operator to report hearing gunshots, but she struggled to pronounce the name of the park where she was, making it difficult to convey her location. She explained that she was with a boy who claimed that his parents had been shot. The call between Cecilia and 911 lasted 23 minutes as she answered the operator's questions. The operator relayed the attack to the police and park rangers, but the call was briefly disconnected. Cecilia persisted and called back, only to be put on hold while the dispatcher contacted emergency responders. Despite the tense and nervous atmosphere in the park, Cecilia remained calm thanks to the adrenaline. After providing details about their exact location, she handed the phone to Arlo, the boy. He told the dispatcher that he was in a tent with his mom, sister, and dad, and when he woke up, he saw someone dressed in black holding a gun. When the 911 operator asked the child where his father was, he paused before responding that he thought his father was hurt. At 6:30 a.m., police officers and paramedics arrived at the campsite to find a horrific scene. All occupants of the Schmidt's tent were dead. The once peaceful campsite had become a crime scene. Law enforcement immediately launched a search for the shooter, who could have been anywhere. The tactical teams swiftly evacuated Makata Cave State Park and Camp Shalom, a nearby Christian summer camp, located 1.5 miles from the attack site. As officials evacuated visitors, they gathered them outside the park. Once everyone was accounted for, it was clear that only one person, Anthony Sherwin, was missing, and he was armed. During an aerial search at 11 a.m., police found a body. Upon reaching it, they confirmed it was Anthony, deceased. Although an investigation was necessary, police identified him as the prime suspect in the homicides, believing he had committed the attack on the Schmidts before taking his own life. The authorities closed the park following the incident, a measure that remained in place until July 28th. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources offered their condolences, with their spokesperson expressing devastation on behalf of the entire team, stating that the event had shaken Iowa's tradition of enjoying its natural wonders. But the legacy would continue for the millions of families who recreate in Iowa's parks. As a mark of respect for Sarah's co-workers, the local authority closed the library for the rest of the day. The tragedy also drew reactions from other political leaders, including the Iowa governor, who expressed horror at the attack and sorrow for the unimaginable tragedy. A U.S. House representative from Iowa tweeted that it was a senseless and horrific crime. Sarah's family was devastated when they lost her. Her sister was particularly heartbroken, feeling as though her life had been turned upside down. She couldn't accept that Sarah was gone, and that she would no longer be able to pick up the phone and talk to her or watch her niece grow up. Family members came from as far away as North Dakota, Texas, and Michigan to attend the private funeral service, which was held at Greenwood Cemetery on August 2nd. Meanwhile, as the loved ones of the Schmidts coped with their grief and tried to console and care for Arlo, the authorities continued their investigation into the brutal crime. According to the Iowa Department of Public Safety's findings, which were based on the autopsy results, Tyler died from a gunshot wound and multiple sharp force injuries. Sarah's death was caused by sharp force injuries alone, and their young daughter was both shot and strangled. In early August 2022, authorities officially identified Anthony Sherwin as the person responsible for the murder of the Schmidt family. Sherwin, 23, had no prior criminal record and acted alone before taking his own life, according to the police. The investigation failed to uncover any motive behind the attack. The assistant director of the Division of Criminal Investigation clarified that there was no established connection between Anthony and the Schmidt family prior to the incident, despite them being neighboring campers. The Nebraska Police Department assisted in the investigation by searching the Sherwin family apartment, but found no suicide note or any indication that could explain why Anthony targeted the Schmidt family and himself. His Facebook page yielded no clues, as it was completely blank. Regarding the weapon used in the attack, the assistant director of the Iowa Division of Criminal Investigation reported that a single hand-assembled firearm was recovered near Anthony's body. This type of weapon, commonly known as a ghost gun, is built by individuals using online purchased parts without restrictions, as they lack serial numbers, making them difficult to regulate and trace. Anthony's parents confirmed that their son had built his own weapon using online instructions. However, they clarified that he did this as a challenge, not because he wanted to own a gun. They emphasized that Anthony was responsible and had never hurt anyone or any animal. The parents, Cecilia and her husband, said their family had never owned guns before. But due to Nebraska's rising crime rates, they decided to acquire some. Because they were new to handling guns, they even took classes to learn how to use them properly. They brought the homemade gun on their trip to protect themselves from crime and possible bear attacks, which they had experienced before while camping. They intended to get rid of the gun later. When they returned home, Anthony's parents were determined to prove their son's innocence. They believed he was a victim of murder, not the killer. According to his mother, an independent autopsy report showed that Anthony had been shot twice, not once, as the police claimed. She was puzzled by how he could have shot himself a second time, which challenged the authorities' suicide theory. They also questioned the description of the clothing the attacker wore. Cecilia remembered telling the 911 operator that the attacker was wearing black, which didn't match what her son had on, green shorts she had given him the day before the tragedy occurred. Furthermore, Cecilia and Joe claimed that the police did not reveal where they found Anthony's body, or whether the weapon he supposedly used to take his own life was the same one used in the attack on the Schmidts. Cecilia sent an email to the media outlining her concerns about the investigation into her son Anthony's death. She emphasized that Anthony had too many reasons to live and would not have abandoned everything in such a way. In her opinion, Anthony was incapable of killing and had no connection to the Schmidt family, and they had seen no signs of him planning an attack. When she asked investigators if they had conducted a ballistic test to confirm matches, they did not respond. Similarly, when Anthony's parents requested the final investigation report to commission an independent review, they received no response. In January 2023, a media outlet submitted a request for public records related to the case under Iowa's Open Records Law and the Freedom of Information Act. The request included incident reports, investigation documents, crime scene summaries, and autopsy reports. However, Devin McClone from the Iowa Department of Public Safety Commissioner responded that the requested records were not public, and the office could only share the immediate facts and circumstances of the case, as provided in the press release links. A few days after the tragedy, a media outlet emailed the official to ask if the weapon Anthony used to take his own life was the same one used in the murders, but she never responded. As it stands, the police believe that Anthony Sherwin was a random killer who brutally murdered 3 beloved members of a Cedar Falls family. However, the family of Cecilia and Joe refuses to accept that their son, who was kind and studious, was involved in the crime. They insist that he was another innocent victim and are determined to prove his innocence. Arlo, the sole survivor of the massacre, was taken in by his aunt and uncle in Cedar Falls. In an interview with a local newspaper, Sarah's brother proudly described his nephew as brave and reported that he was doing well mentally. The GoFundMe page set up after the tragedy continues to receive donations to support Arlo's care and education. As the world heralded 1993 with joy and resolutions, one man in London set an eerie New Year's resolution of his own, a resolution to become a notorious killer. His target? Unsuspecting men in the gay community. But who was Colin Ireland, and what drove him to declare such a harrowing resolution? Why did he choose to transform a symbol of new beginnings into a dark and twisted game of cat and mouse? Hi, my name is James. Welcome to True Crime Case Files. In today's deep dive, we peel back the layers of one of the UK's most calculated serial killers, a man who sought fame through the fear he instilled. We'll uncover the story of how he executed his plan with chilling precision and overshadowed a bustling city's celebratory spirit by a series of gruesome crimes. To understand the mind behind the moniker the Gay Slayer, we must delve into the past of Colin Ireland. Born in 1954 in Dartford, Kent, Ireland's early life was marked by turbulence, upheaval, and poverty. His childhood, spent in an unsettled home, was the first chapter in a life marked by discontent and detachment. Raised by a single mother, Ireland's formative years were a carousel of different men entering and leaving his life. This instability laid the groundwork for a personality that craved control, a trait that would later manifest in the most sinister ways. His parents were unmarried 17-year-olds. His father left soon after his birth, and Ireland didn't know his identity. Due to his mother's money problems, they had to move a number of times. In spite of all the hardships, Ireland had a close relationship with his mother and remembered her as affectionate and benevolent. Ireland said that as a child, he was a thin, lanky little runt, always getting the worst of it, from schoolyard bullies. This made Ireland frequently miss school. As a result, he didn't get a proper education and became sad and withdrawn, choosing his few friends among the most unthreatening kids. As a teenager, Ireland found himself entangled with the law. His crimes, though initially petty, hinted at a deeper struggle within, a struggle for identity and a desperate need to assert his significance in a world where he felt invisible. Constantly in trouble of his own making, Ireland was sent to borstalls and prisons for theft, robbery, blackmail, and burglary. He ran away to London at 16 and hung out in an amusement arcade with a bad reputation where young boys were targeted by pedophiles. Ireland was approached by some of them. Besides, one of his jobs was a bouncer on a gay club. That's where his understanding of gay subcultures came from. As Ireland himself described the 70s, I was entering what I call the lost period, common to those who suffer from psychopathy. In between custodial periods, a lot of the 70s were a blur. I spent my time detached and wondering. In 1982, Ireland married Virginia Zammit, who was confined to a wheelchair. His colleague witnessed a pleasant family life when he visited them. They divorced 5 years later after Ireland's adultery. In 1989, he married Janet Young. He was abusive and after 4 months left his wife abruptly when she was away for the weekend, stealing over £10,000 from her account and leaving her completely broke. He moved to Southend-on-Sea, Essex, roughly 60 kilometers east of London, and lived in a hostel there. Later, he moved to his own flat. There, in this flat, Ireland decided to become a serial killer as his New Year's resolution. Drifting through adulthood, Ireland's life was a patchwork of odd jobs and fleeting relationships. But beneath this veneer of normalcy, there was a growing fascination with infamy and a desire to etch his name into criminal history. Ireland immersed himself in the dark world of serial killers. He studied them, not with a sense of horror, but with an analytical eye. What made them tick? How did they elude capture? These were the questions that consumed him. He spent many hours reading about serial killers and learning about geographic profiling, hence deciding to commit his murders far away from his home. A killer usually commits crimes in a certain radius of about 7 miles from his home. That's why Ireland chose London for his crime scene. He also planned to have at least 5 victims, because he had read that a person needs to have such body count to qualify as a serial killer. The year 1993 witnessed a terrifying series of crimes that shook the core of London's LGBTQ+ community. Colin Ireland, a man whose unassuming demeanor masked a sinister agenda, embarked on a calculated campaign of terror, meticulously planning and executing a series of murders with chilling precision. Ireland's hunting ground was the vibrant gay scene of London. He frequented the Coleherne Pub, a known gay bar seeking out his potential victims. Here, amid the pulsing music and crowded dance floor, Ireland would select and study his targets, plotting their fates with cold detachment. Ireland sought men who liked the passive role and S&M, so he could easily restrain them as they believed it was a sexual game. Members of the pub would wear color-coded handkerchiefs to indicate their sexual proclivities. Ireland was posing as a dominant partner. His first victim, Peter Walker, was a 45-year-old choreographer. Ireland met Walker at the Coleherne, and what started as a night of perceived intimacy quickly turned into a nightmare. Walker's body was discovered in his apartment, revealing the horror of Ireland's actions. Bound, gagged, and suffocated by a plastic bag placed over his head, Walker's death was just the beginning of Ireland's gruesome spree. Ireland placed 2 teddy bears in a sexual position on Walker's body, and burned some of his pubic hair so he could smell it. While searching the flat, he discovered that Walker was HIV positive. Enraged, Ireland stuffed a condom into Walker's mouth and another one into his nostril. Each crime scene told a story of meticulous planning and ruthless execution. He carried a murder kit, a rope, handcuffs, and a change of clothing. Ireland left little evidence behind, confounding the police and instilling a growing sense of fear within the community. He was methodical, ensuring each scene was thoroughly cleaned, removing any traces that could lead back to him. He also stayed in the flat till morning to avoid suspicion from leaving in the middle of the night. To describe the nights after his murders, Ireland said, "I think that affected me mentally to quite a degree, sitting with his body for 5 to 6 hours, watching him gradually get blotches, go cold. It wasn't something that I could cope with, to be honest." Ireland disposed of all the things he touched by throwing them out of a train window on his way back to Southend. When the police discovered the body, they assumed it was the result of a sexual game gone wrong. 2 months later, Ireland returned to the pub where he met 37-year-old librarian Christopher Dunn, who invited Ireland to his flat. Ireland tied, handcuffed, then beat and tortured his helpless victim before suffocating him by stuffing pieces of cloth into his mouth. After murdering him, Ireland used Dunn's PIN and bank card to withdraw $200 from his account. The police assumed it was an accident as a result of a sex game and didn't link his death to Walker's. Ireland was getting more and more confident as his New Year's resolution was coming together. Ireland met 35-year-old businessman Perry Bradley III at the Coleherne pub. He was the son of Texas Democratic Party fundraiser Perry Bradley Jr. In his Kensington flat, Bradley refused to be tied, but Ireland told him that he couldn't perform sexually without it. Bradley reluctantly agreed, and then Ireland told him that he was a thief and he just wanted his money and pin. After Bradley gave Ireland his pin, Ireland told him that he should try to fall asleep, as he wouldn't leave his flat till morning. Bradley did fall asleep, and Ireland realized that Bradley could identify him and strangled him. Then he placed a doll on top of the dead man's body. The heinous crimes of Colin Ireland not only sent shockwaves through the communities he targeted, but also captured the relentless gaze of the media. The press dubbed him the Gay Slayer, a moniker that sensationalized his horrific acts and underscored the homophobic undercurrents of the time. Within 3 days, on June 7th, Ireland was back at the Coleherne. He met 33-year-old Andrew Collier, a housing warden, and went to his home. Again, Ireland handcuffed and tied his victim to the bed, demanding his bank details. After killing Collier's cat, Ireland strangled Collier. He placed a condom on Collier's penis and fastened the dead cat's mouth over it, and put the cat's tail into Collier's mouth. On June 15th, Ireland met Maltese chef Emanuele Spiteri. Aged 41, he cuffed, bound, and strangled his victim, then stayed in his flat watching TV and eating Spiteri's food. After cleaning the scene, Ireland set fire to the flat, but it only caused minor damage. As the body count rose, so did the alarm. The gay community, already marginalized, now found itself in the grip of a predator who walked among them, unseen, unknown, and deadly. But what was the motive behind these abhorrent acts? Was it a deep-seated animosity towards the gay community, or something more cold and calculated? And what were the critical mistakes Ireland made, and how did they lead to his capture? As the death toll rose, London's Metropolitan Police found themselves grappling with a cunning predator. The investigation into Colin Ireland's crimes was a race against time, a complex puzzle that demanded not just diligence, but innovation in the face of a killer who seemed always one step ahead. Initially, the investigation faced significant challenges. Ireland's careful planning and meticulous cleanup at each crime scene left frustratingly few clues. The killer's methodical approach in disguising his identity and movements compounded the difficulty, turning the investigation into a labyrinthine task. Detectives were confronted with a disturbing pattern. All victims were men from the gay community, their bodies discovered in their own homes, a sign of trust, brutally exploited. This realization led to a focused investigation in London's gay scene, particularly around the Coleherne pub where Ireland hunted for his victims. The breakthrough came from meticulous police work and a stroke of luck. A forgotten fingerprint at a crime scene, a chance capture on one of London's first CCTV cameras. These were the pivotal moments that began to unravel Ireland's web of deceit. When Ireland was in Andrew Collier's flat, they heard a noise outside and came up to the window. Ireland gripped a horizontal metal bar across the window and forgot to wipe it off. The police then found these fingerprints. And finally, Ireland was captured on CCTV. Some witnesses said Spiteri left Coleherne with a man. Then police traced his route home. His train journey went through Charing Cross Station, fitted with one of London's first CCTV cameras. Each piece of evidence was a precious key, unlocking parts of a puzzle that Ireland thought he had so carefully hidden. But what was it that finally led to Ireland's downfall? How did the police connect the dots in a case that seemed to defy resolution? The relentless pursuit of justice in the Colin Ireland case turned a crucial corner with a single seemingly innocuous phone call. Ireland, emboldened by his actions, made a call to the police, taunting them about his crimes. The day after Peter Walker's murder, having heard no news reports of his crime, he anonymously called the Samaritans and the Sun, telling them that he had murdered Walker and locked his dogs in another room. Later, the police received a call from Dunn's killer taunting them because they had failed to link his death to Walker's. In his next anonymous call to the police, he asked, "Are you still interested in the death of Peter Walker? Why have you stopped the investigation? Doesn't the death of a homosexual man mean anything? I will do another. I have always dreamed of doing the perfect murder." After Collier's death, Ireland called Kensington police and said that he had killed 4 men and they had to stop him. He told the police that he had read many books on serial killers and said, "If you don't stop me, it will be 1 a week." He told the police that he had studied the FBI manual, that is, Whoever Fights Monsters, by ex-FBI agent and serial killer specialist Robert Ressler. "I have got the book," he said. "I know how many you have to do." Ireland later said that the TV crime series, The Bill, had also given him many of his ideas and police evasion methods. Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks said, "Just because you read books about serial killers doesn't mean you have any interest in becoming a serial killer yourself. But if that is your motive, then actually reading books can give you an awareness of the ways in which serial killers have acted in the past." Armed with this new evidence, the police intensified their efforts. A suspect started to take shape from the shadows. It was a breakthrough moment in the investigation, a lead that they desperately needed. On 19th of July 1993, Ireland went to his solicitor. He said that he was on the CCTV, but that he had not killed Spiteri. He went to his flat for sex, but there was another man. He didn't want a threesome, and left. The investigation took a dramatic turn as law enforcement officers matched Ireland's fingerprint to the Collier crime scene. His arrest was a moment of triumph mixed with stark horror as the extent of his crimes came to light. Ireland's overconfidence combined with advanced police work and the critical clues helped bring the killer to justice. The capture of Colin Ireland was more than just the conclusion of a manhunt. It was a moment that brought some semblance of closure to the victims' families and a community shaken by fear. It also opened up vital conversations about the safety of marginalized groups. The trial of Colin Ireland was set to be a gripping chapter in British legal history, raising questions about the nature of evil and the psyche of a man who sought infamy through brutality. What revelations would his trial bring? A legal journey that would reveal the full extent of his chilling crimes was just beginning. The trial was a meticulous dissection of Ireland's actions, each day unraveling more about the man behind the murders. The prosecution presented a case built on a foundation of solid evidence. Ireland, facing overwhelming evidence, made a decision that stunned the courtroom. He confessed to his crimes, detailing them with a cold detachment that sent shivers down the spines of all present. His confession was not just an admission of guilt, but a hair-raising narrative of his calculated and brutal actions. Ironically, pleading guilty to all his murders and confessing, Ireland avoided the publicity he so deeply craved. The heart of the trial, however, lay in the stories of the victims. Their lives, tragically lost, remind us of the human cost of hate and prejudice. Were these 5 murders Ireland's only crimes? Or did he kill others? Serial killers often withhold some of their murders from the police to gain a sense of control over them, even in prison. In January 1993, soon after Ireland's resolution, the police found a dead gay man in his home in Soho. They believed this might have been done by Ireland. However, the gay slayer never claimed this crime. Along with his other victims, a perilous shadow loomed over Hollywood star Tom Cruise. In a chilling twist of fate, Cruise, then at the height of his career and married to Nicole Kidman, narrowly escaped a potentially fatal encounter. According to statements and police files that later surfaced, Ireland had spotted Cruise in a London bar in 1993. Driven by a perilous and misguided belief, Ireland falsely assumed Cruise to be gay and plotted to make him one of his victims. The killer's sinister plan was unexpectedly thwarted. Cruise, possibly sensing something amiss or merely coincidental in his timing, left the bar abruptly, eluding Ireland's grasp. Ireland's conviction was a foregone conclusion, but the sentencing phase was a crucial moment. The judge, in a powerful address, condemned Ireland's actions, emphasizing the gravity and premeditated nature of the crimes. The judge called Ireland exceptionally frightening and dangerous. He said to him, "To take one human life is an outrage. To take 5 is carnage. In my view, it is absolutely clear you should never be released." Ireland was sentenced to 5 counts of life imprisonment for the murders. But the story does not end with Ireland's conviction. There are unconfirmed rumors that Ireland strangled his cellmate, a convicted child killer, in Wakefield Prison, Yorkshire. After that, he was transferred to maximum security lodgings at Whitemoor Prison, Cambridgeshire, into a private cell of his own. His pattern of selecting victims, meticulous planning, and the psychological games played with law enforcement are now studied in criminal psychology courses worldwide. Moreover, the investigation into Ireland's crimes highlighted the importance of community involvement in criminal cases. The breakthroughs in this case were a result of not just police work, but also the cooperation of the community, which had been terrorized by his actions. Ireland's case became a catalyst for discussions about homophobia and hate crimes. It highlighted the urgent need for societal change, not just in policy, but in everyday attitudes and understanding. Ireland died on 21 February 2012 of pulmonary fibrosis and a fractured hip he had suffered earlier. Former prison governor Vanessa Frake, who had crossed paths with numerous hardened criminals, called Ireland the most frightening prisoner she has ever come across. She said, "I don't know what it was about him. He just emanated evil." He was proud of what he did, same as many other serial killers. What drives a man to commit such calculated and brutal acts of violence? To understand Ireland's psyche, we delve into the complex labyrinth of his mind, piecing together a profile that is as disturbing as it is intriguing. Experts who have studied Ireland's case point to a combination of factors. His troubled childhood, marked by instability and lack of a father figure, may have sown the seeds of his later behavior, but it was his deep-seated desire for recognition, a craving to leave a mark on the world that propelled him into the abyss of serial killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes suggests a high level of intelligence and planning. He studied serial killers, not with repulsion, but with a scholar's interest. He learned from their mistakes, aiming not just to evade capture but to master the art of killing. Ireland's methodical approach to his crimes offers a chilling glimpse into the mindset of a serial killer. His need for control and recognition, coupled with his ability to blend into society, challenges our understanding of criminal behavior. Forensic psychologists theorize that Ireland's choice of victims from the gay community was strategic rather than personal. He saw them as easy targets, vulnerable due to societal marginalization. This choice reflects not just a cold-blooded strategy, but a chilling indifference to human life. He said about how he chose his victims, "I think it's been something that's been triggered in me sometime before. I felt if I was approached, it was likely that I would kill. I thought to myself, if I wasn't approached, something wouldn't have happened. I would have gone on my way and nothing would have happened." Forensic psychologist Professor Michael Brooks explained, "What he does is he reduces the chance of choosing an inappropriate victim, or somebody who wasn't going to respond, by not selecting those who didn't approach him." Perhaps the most terrifying aspect of Ireland's psychology is his lack of remorse. His confessions were devoid of emotion, his recounting of the crimes clinical. This detachment points to a possible psychopathic personality, where empathy and conscience are alarmingly absent. Detective Inspector Martin Finnegan said, "He was very factual about his acts, as if he was describing someone else's activities. Absolutely no compassion at all. I didn't detect much hatred. It was just matter-of-fact, like, I went down the shops and bought this, went into the flat and killed him." In most cases, the murderers who kill gay people are gay themselves, and those blatantly homophobic are often secretly gay. Was it really a plausible excuse for Ireland to give in to his secret emotions? Ireland compared the buzz of his first kill to that of losing his virginity. Maybe these hidden feelings brought this simile to his mind. Was Ireland just dishonest with himself and others, trying to hide what he really couldn't control? Ireland said he was heterosexual and didn't touch or have sex with the men he killed. However, it's difficult to imagine that at least 5 people invited him to his flat for sex, undressed, and let Ireland tie them without even a single kiss. Can a person even decide to become a serial killer as a career just for the sake of it without any ulterior motives? And choose the specifics of his crimes by pure logic? Or is it something deeper? Or was theft the real reason of Ireland's crimes, and murdering his victims was a calculated move to prevent them from identifying him later? There's inconsistency in Ireland's story about the murder of Perry Bradley. He said that he had promised Bradley to leave him alive, but then it occurred to him that Bradley could identify him. This narrative strongly contradicts with his whole intention of choosing his victims for murder to gain fame from becoming a serial killer. Was Ireland just exploiting homophobic moods in the society to mask the mercenary nature of his crimes, hoping that it will win him sympathy of the public and reduce the term of his imprisonment? Or was there more than one reason, perhaps all of them combined? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. Share your perspectives and let me know what other cases you'd like me to explore. Until next time.